Welcome to the Mostly Pod Out of Night. Mostly, I am Graveyard, joined by my co-host Salem.
Hello.
This is episode 18 of our weekly All Things Horror podcast. This episode will be diving into the more horror side of David Cronenberg. These movies include The Brood, Scanners, VideoDrome, and The Fly. Something that's been kind of a long time coming, and this is hopefully part one of an ongoing series of the works of David Cronenberg. As we go down in our episode list, we'll get to more psychological stuff as the show progresses.
Yeah, there's at least enough for one more episode.
Yes, absolutely. We're not going to include like Naked Lunch.
What?
But I know. But we may include, Crash, Existence, and stuff like that. So we'll see when we get there, when we make the list. So we'll do our normal thing. We'll discuss each movie, kind of recap it, first thoughts, all that fun stuff. And our rating systems for this episode is number of shotgun shells out of 10, because there's enough shotguns in these four movies to just be what we chose. So,
right. Yeah, it's Scanners especially, but yeah, there's enough to go around for all these.
Yes. All right, so starting off, we're going to be doing chronological order. We're going to be starting off with The Brood. So, Salem, why don't you go ahead and take it away for the recap?
Sure. Let's see. The Brood. Opens up with, okay, I'm going to call him, for the sake of this, Dr. Proximo. Because I can't for the life of me remember either his real name or his character name in this movie. I always just remember him as Proximo from Gladiator. So I'm just going to call him Dr. Proximo. So from now on, I believe his real name his name is supposed to be like Dr. Ragtag or something like that. I don't know.
Raglan.
Right. I like Dr. Proximo. I'm going to call him Dr. Proximo from here on out. So he is a psychologist, right? And he's a specialist in the area of psychoplasmics, which is essentially the art of changing your own body with your mind.
Yes.
They don't really explain it fully. I mean, they do later in the movie, but they don't really explain it fully at this point, but they do state it.
Well, it's the idea of mind over matter, that your mind,
right.
Like you can will yourself into healing.
Right. Well, I think they're going for because you get a pyrokinesis, cryokinesis, you control fire with your mind, you control cold with your mind. I think this is just you control your own body with your mind is what I think they're going for.
Right.
But anyway, so it opens up on this scene where Dr. Proximo is like talking to this guy who's having a confrontation with his father. So Dr. Proximo is pretending to be his father. And this guy is obviously the bad blood between them. Okay. And then the dad is just being generally abusive to the son. I mean, he's an adult. He's got a beard and everything, but he's role playing earlier in his life about how his father hurt him.
Mm-hmm.
And the more the father hurts him, the more these wounds and lesions and kind of scars appear all over the guy's body.
Yes.
And they get worse as they go along. And again, there's no, cutting. Well, I mean, there's cutting as far as editing goes, but in this scene, they're happening as they go along. And then at the end, he's saying this is, see the wounds. This is what you've done to me by treating me this way, Dad. And then they kind of have a little hug at the end, and then all the wounds are gone.
Yep.
And it's just kind of like a little mini demonstration of, what the psychoplasmics is supposed to do. So essentially our main character, the protagonist, is a guy who, his wife, I guess they don't really fully explain what was going on, but obviously they split up. And she has some kind of, mental issue. So where she had to go into intensive therapy, and she went to this psychologist. And she's been staying in his retreat, right? Yep. It kind of reminded me of The Howling.
Yes.
How they have that weird retreat in the woods. It was kind of reminded me of that. So where, there's this psychological healing retreat in the woods. And anyway, she stays there all the time. And kind of, we get into that by the protagonist, I think Frank was his name. And the wife, I think, what was her name?
Nola?
Nola? I don't know,
Nola.
Something weird. Anyway, Nola was her name.
Yeah.
So they're split up. She's living full time with this thing, but they have a daughter
who's there with her.
Right. But yeah, she visits her every other weekend, is I think how they were saying it.
Yeah.
So like, but she visits her when she's in this like psychological retreat, and like the dad can't see the kid because he's not allowed into the psychological retreat because she's like in isolation. Like no one can talk to her supposedly.
And what I don't like about this treat is it seems very sexual in nature already.
There's a lot of
right off the bat.
Right, there's a lot of weird energy going on. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's odd. Okay, like so the guy is rightfully like, I don't like this place. I mean, I feel that too. Dr. Proximo is like initially just, uncomfortable, to kind of be around. He's like got this weird, intense look, and he's like he like avoids talking to people, like especially if there's like a bad thing coming on, like he just avoids it,
Yeah.
And anyway, and his like assistant is, I think, even creepier than he is,
That's fair.
Yeah. Anyway, just weird. Anyway, so he goes to pick up his daughter after his time with his mother, and he brings her home, and he sees that she's got all these weird like wounds all over her, like bites and scratches and scars and weird stuff like that. So he's like taking pictures, and then he's trying to like go to lawyers to find out what he can do to like remove the custody from the mother, because obviously the mother is like hurting the child in some way. I mean, I guess it's just the product of the times, right? Because this came out like 79?
79, yeah.
Right. I mean, like if that happened now, like you would go to like, DCFS and you like immediately,
there'd be no question about
right.
it. But
yeah. There'd be
like,
no question. Like, okay, like the child was injured, has physical injuries after visiting a parent. Like, a court order would immediately be put in place to like stop that person from being around the child, or maybe not altogether, but at least definitely not without supervision.
Right, because this is time frame of like the child belongs with the mother time frame of our world.
Right,
and no matter what.
Yeah, and they do mention that. They do the lawyers do mention that, saying like this is a mother centric thing. Like all the courts believe that the child should be with their mother regardless of how they're treated or whatever.
Yeah,
I guess I guess it's just a product of the times, but like it just felt odd to me, going like, what do you mean? Like this child has physical injuries. Why would this not be a case? But
right.
Again, all that because I mean, again, if you go to open court and she's like in a psychological retreat, isolated from the world because she has mental issues, and then the child is now injured when it goes to see her. I mean, that's like a slam dunk, right? I mean, there's no like judge in the world that would go like, yeah, no, take him away.
Well, especially because as you're seeing the sessions go on, you realize that the doctor, whatever you called him, is reliving Nola's childhood where she was also abused.
Right.
So you would think, okay, well, there's a history of abuse, which should be taken into account. And then therefore she's also abusing her own child because of her own issues that she has.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that... Again, from the logical point of view, yes, that is what is happening, and that's very easy for anyone to see at that point.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he's like trying to figure out a way to like get the custody away. Basically, comes to the conclusion that it's not going to happen, at least not at this time.
Right.
So he is while he's doing this kind of stuff, I believe he goes to meet with somebody else, and then he leaves the daughter with the mother-in-law. So this is his wife's mother. And she's obviously
who we've been told is abusive.
Right. Yeah. At this point, we had one scene with Nola and Dr. Proximo where they're like, role playing again, and when she's role playing that she was hurt by her mother.
Yeah.
So then now we go to that mother, and then he leaves the daughter with her, and then he goes off to do more lawyer talks or whatever he's doing.
Yeah.
And you can tell that. Grandma is a little off because, she's got like a big old glass of whiskey, and like the glass is like not even half done. And she's like, oh, I need to go get a refill. So you're like, okay, this is probably not going to end well. Right.
I mean, that's a good time to fill whiskey. Let's be honest.
Right. So she goes into the kitchen, and at this point, we kind of cut back and forth between, Dr. Proximo and Nola having another session. This one even more emotionally intensive than the last one. So where she's like, crying and getting very emotional about the horrible things that have happened to her from her mother. Right.
Yeah.
And then as that's happening, the mother is going in the kitchen and making herself another drink. And then like this weird, I don't know, disfigured dwarf child character appears.
Yeah,
it doesn't really show the face, but it obviously small, right?
I'd say the daughter size.
Right, yeah, the daughter size, but they do cut to the daughter being in the other room, so it's not the daughter. I mean, my first thought was like, okay, it's the daughter, but
right, that was my first thought.
Right, yeah, but they're wearing different clothes. The daughter is shown in the other room, so I mean, it's very clearly not her. And it picks up a tenderizing hammer from the kitchen, and then just starts beating the woman to death.
Yep.
There's like blood everywhere, whatever. And then the daughter comes in the room, sees the dead grandmother, and then sees this disfigured dwarf, whatever it is, like sitting on the stairs with bloody hands, obviously like, grabbing the railing of the stairs, leaving bloody handprints. And then it just cuts away. And then it cuts away to the police calling Frank, the protagonist guy, and saying, hey, what was he? I don't remember. What was he doing at that time?
I think he was just meeting with lawyers and just doing really boring ass shit.
Yeah. And again, I don't think anything happened. I was trying to say, I don't think he was doing anything at this point, but whatever. So he gets a call.
Was he at work? He might have been at work.
I don't know. I don't even know what he did.
Construction?
I don't remember. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. He was like an architect or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, restoration. That's what. Okay.
Yeah.
So he gets a call. He has to go down to the police station. The police, they say that they found his daughter upstairs asleep, and it was very hard for them to wake her up. And they're like, she's in with the psychologist now. The psychologist guy wants to talk to him, comes in, talks to him, basically says that, yeah, I'm pretty sure she saw something. It's pretty obvious that she's like, hiding, or suppressing what she saw, what she felt. But anyway, she says she doesn't even remember going there. She doesn't even remember, talking to grandma at all.
Right.
So like, obviously, things are suppressed. So he's like, okay, I'll keep an eye on her. He goes and, picks her up and brings her back home. At this point, he kind of meets up with her teacher, because I think she's what? I don't know, kindergarten, first grade.
5.
Yeah. I mean, So we're talking kindergarten probably.
Yeah.
Her kindergarten teacher, wants to talk to the dad, and the girl, the daughter was like, oh, she's hungry. We should feed her. She should come over for dinner. And he's like, okay. I mean, I guess that's how they did it back in those days, but
yep.
So she comes over, for dinner. And they're going to discuss the child or whatever, as they're eating dinner, or I think right after they're done with dinner.
Yeah.
He gets a call from the dad. So his father-in-law.
Right.
And the mother-in-law, right. Yeah. The mother-in-law and father-in-law were like separated, divorced, and had been for years. But when she died, he came back in town, to check it out. He ended up going to try to go see her in her, psychological retreat. She was turned away by Dr. Proximo. He was drunk then. He got drunker since then. And he's calling Frank and saying, very drunk, and saying, hey, I'm going to go down there and I'm going to bust the door down and I'm going to figure out what's going on with her. Like, I need to talk to her. Her mother's dead. They're not telling her that she's dead. She needs to be told the truth.
Yeah.
And so he's like, obviously, okay, yeah, that's not a good time to do that. Not a good time, not only that because you're drunk, but it's at night, like it's not a good idea, but he's like, well, I'm going to go whether you come here or not. And so he's like, okay, I'll be right there. I'll be there 15 minutes. I'll be there.
Right.
So he leaves the teacher in charge of the house and, watching the daughter. The daughter has already gone to bed at this point. So she's just essentially sitting there and waiting. And then he goes to the house to go figure out what's going on with the dad. As we're doing that, we get another cut scene to Nola and Dr. Proximo are again having another session. So where Dr. Proximo is now pretending to be her dad. And she's very upset that the dad, never did anything about the mom abusing her. She always, turned away and pretended it wasn't happening. She's very, very upset about him not helping, right?
So he's drunk, yeah.
Right, yeah. So they cut to the dad, like, looking around the house, and he ends up finding the dwarf child thing underneath the bed.
Right.
So it comes out, and it picks up like these like snow globes or something, like, I don't know, like the glass decoration paperweights. I don't know how to describe those things.
Yep.
But yeah, so they just beats him to death with these glass balls, right?
Yes.
and then goes back underneath the bed.
Yep.
So then Frank gets there, within 15 minutes, sees him dead on the ground. And at this point, I'm like, okay, there's no way the police are not going to like blame him, right? Because he's now been directly involved in 2 of these weird murders. He's got to be suspect number 1. But they just, well, again, this dwarf thing, whatever, comes out from under the bed, throws the snow globe things at him. They like embed in the wall. But anyway, they have a little fight. And they go into the shower, and he's like trying to choke him to death or whatever. They're having a struggle. And then eventually this child thing just falls off his back and just stops moving.
Yep.
Like unexplained, just falls down, stops moving. So yeah, the police come and they're like, okay, yeah, so it looks like, yeah, the mom and the dad were both killed by this freaky child thing. We need to do an autopsy and figure out what's going on. So they do an autopsy on this thing, and it's got, 1, it's got no sex organs. 2, it's got like every weird deformity known to man, like cleft lips, they're all, freaky looking. They got like weird clawed hands.
No teeth.
No teeth. They got like, they say the beak gums or something.
Yeah.
Bizarre. Anyway.
No belly button.
Right. Yeah. No navel. Right. So this thing is like, you have no idea where it came from or
and there's a sack that they said it's like the camel's hump.
Right.
Whatever that is.
Yeah. Or like an egg sack. And he literally calls it its fuel tank.
Yeah.
And it's like, it has this fuel tank that it was running off of. And essentially what happened is it ran out of fuel in this camel's hump thing.
Yeah.
And so it just died because it had no more energy.
Yep.
And they're like, okay. So they're like, obviously this is some weird thing. And, he's now been, knocked out of, person of interest or whatever, because obviously this freaky child thing killed everybody. So now both the mom and the dad are dead. And then, okay. So the teacher is watching the child at home while he's dealing with all this cop stuff.
Yes.
And Nola calls the house, even though she's not supposed to. She calls the house. The teacher answers the phone, assuming it's going to be the guy, because she was only supposed to be watching him for like 45 minutes or something, and it's been hours at this point. So she answers the phone, and a lady's like, who are you? Why are you there? She says who she is, and of course the mom knows that's the teacher. So she's like, now she thinks that the teacher is like trying to like, get with her husband and make their new family and take her, not only her husband away, but her child away.
Yes.
So she basically blames the teacher now, for this. So yeah, the guy gets home. The teacher's like, I need to leave. Like I've been here for hours. Like he's like, let me explain. She's like, nah. I don't need an explanation. I just need to get out of here. She's like, your life is too complicated. So obviously there was some kind of like mutual interest there, right? Yeah. She wouldn't say your life is too complicated unless there was a little thing going on. Anyway, obviously it wasn't like a major thing, but obviously there was something going on. Anyway, so then we cut back to the next day, and so the kid doesn't even get a day off of school for both of her grandparents dying. She has to go back the next day anyway. So they go back to the school, and they drop her off. They're kind of like an awkward wave from the teacher when she sees him. But he stays outside because one of the other moms waves him over and they're talking. So we cut inside the school, and like 2 of the freaky, weird, disfigured children dwarf things are in the school, like dressed in snowsuits. So I guess they're disguised.
Yes.
And they attack and murder the teacher in the classroom in front of all the other children, with like toy hammers.
Yeah.
I don't know how toy hammers that you give children would be. I guess this was 79. So maybe these are high quality children's toys. I don't know, but
not that cheap plastic stuff.
Right. It's a real wood and metal, right? I guess. Yeah. I don't know. So they beat the teacher to death with these hammers. And then they grab the girl, the daughter, and they leave. I don't think I even mentioned her name. Her name is Candy.
Yes.
Not that it matters, but her name is Candy. So she leaves, and like the 2 weird dwarf children like walk her down the street away. At this point, we don't know where.
Aren't they hand in hand too?
Yes. They're walking down the street and cars are passing them by. I'm like, how do you not stop? Like, these are obviously like 6-year-old children.
Right.
Why would you not stop? There's 3 6-year-old children in snowsuits because it's cold and winter outside, and you're just passing them by on a road.
70s.
I guess. Yeah, it's 79. It's like, kids will be fine. Put some hair on their chest. Yeah, so they leave. So of course, the teacher is murdered, and again, this guy is the first person on the scene again when these children are murdering people. I don't know how they're not investigating this guy. Like, this is extremely suspicious, right?
I mean, besides they found this mutated child, essentially.
Right. But I mean, but again, this guy has a direct relationship to all 3 of these people. And he's the first person on the scene, except for the mother-in-law. But but the other ones, but he was the last person to see her alive.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, he was the last person to be near these people, and he has a direct personal relationship. Well, I don't know how he would not be at least a person of interest. Whatever. But he's not. So.
Yeah.
So of course, he's like trying to figure out where the daughter is. Oh, I guess I forgot the little subplot of how when he was looking for people to help him with his lawsuit against the psychological retreat people, he meets this one creepy guy with a comb over that apparently used to be one of his followers that was at this retreat, but has now left and is now against him. And is now trying to put a lawsuit against him because he got some weird throat cancer from the
right. He's like, well, how do you prove that?
Right, and he's like, you don't. He's like, he's just doing the lawsuit to slander him, essentially, and that's essentially the only thing he's doing. So he leaves because, of course, this isn't going to help him. I mean, yeah, he wants that guy to be hurt, but he can't do anything for this lawsuit anyway.
And realistically, that scene is the first aspect of body horror that we really see.
Right. Yeah, he's got this weird
doidal.
Yeah, it's like an Adam's apple that looks like I don't know,
like a turkey,
right?
Dangling thing.
Yeah, it doesn't look pleasant.
Right.
Yeah. So like essentially, at this point, Dr. Proximo, kind of panics and he closes down the psychological retreat. Right. So all of the patients have to leave, and they all get on a big bus, and he makes them leave.
Yeah.
And when that happens, the one guy with the bearded guy who was in the very opening scene of the movie is like apparently like the most unable to go back to a normal life. Like, this guy's like addicted to this doctor, and he can't live without him. So he goes back into regular life. He meets up with Comb Over Creepy Guy. Comb Over Creepy Guy calls Frank and says, "Hey, I got a guy you want to talk to." So he goes and talks to this guy. I think he shows up later. I mean, again, there's a couple scenes with the guy, but I'm just going to condense it into one because it doesn't matter. So essentially, the information he gets from this guy is that there's creepy, weird children that live on the compound, and they live in the work shed. Okay, so now he knows, okay, these creepy, weird children live in the work shed. Creepy, weird children took his daughter, so he's going to go down there to try to rescue his daughter, right?
Yep.
So he goes down to the creepy, weird work shed on the psychological retreat. And he gets there, and he's, looking around, and he finds Dr. Proximo coming up. And at this point, we get the exposition of what is actually going on. And Dr. Proximo, at this point, seems like okay. Like, you kind of assume he's going to be like the antagonist, right? He's going to be the villain. And at this point, he's basically showing his cards that he's not the villain. He's actually trying to limit the damage that's happening. Obviously, he didn't do a very good job, but at least that was what he was trying to do. Like, he was actually trying to be a psychologist and help.
Right.
Anyway, so what happens is that these deformed dwarf children are created by the mind of Nola.
Yeah.
And she's basically like created, like, she is like the pinnacle of the psychoplasmics. Like, she has the most power of all of them because she can create like new beings, as part of herself. Other people can just change little parts of themselves. She can actually like create life,
right, and
give life to things.
And she's becoming like the queen of a hive mind.
Right. Yeah. So there's like a lot of these kids. I mean, like, I don't know, what, 20, 30?
Yeah, something like that.
So basically he's explaining that, she is giving birth, for lack of a better word, to these things. And that these things are then connected to her psychically, so that whenever she feels strong feelings towards something, these things act on that thing and try to help her. That's why when she was having bad feelings about her mother, they went and murdered her mother. That's why when she was having weird things about her father, they went and murdered her father. Again, she thought the teacher was trying to, like, you know, take away her family. So then killed the family, and then she wanted her daughter back. So they brought the daughter back to her. Okay. So these things are then doing that. So then the doctor, you know, kind of selflessly offers, like, okay, I know where the daughter is. You know, she's in their little boarding house. I'm going to go in there and get her, but you have to go in there and calm Nola down. You have to keep her calm. You have to keep her happy, because when she's calm and happy, those children are neutral and they don't react.
Right. At this point, Dr. Proximo is realizing that they're too dangerous to continue.
Right. Yeah. At this point, he's like, yeah, this is over. Like, obviously another murder has happened. All the things that I'm trying to do to limit the damage she can do, that's why I'm isolating her. It's not working. Like, no matter how far away she is away from these things that upset her, they still get there and kill him. So yeah, at this point, he's like, yeah, this needs to end. Yeah. So he offers the help. He's going to go in and get the daughter, but Frank's job is to keep Nola happy, because, you know, he's the only one that she's going to listen to. I thought it would probably have worked better the other way.
Yes,
but because, but whatever. For the sake of the movie, this is how it happened. So basically, yeah. So he goes in there, starts distracting Nola. The doctor goes in, finds the daughter, gets the daughter, trying to bring her out. He's trying to calm Nola down by telling her he still loves her. He still wants to get back with her. We need to have our family back again. And she's initially looks like she's like down with this, right? That she's okay with this. And then eventually she kind of twists, being like, well, I'm different now. You have to accept me the way that I'm different. And he's like, well, yeah, I accept you no matter how you are. And she's like, oh, now you have to look at the real me. And she like pulls her like weird dress gown thing away. And I mean, obviously the most important thing is, like, she has this weird kind of like egg sac thing hanging out of her stomach.
Yeah.
Right. And it looks like a big nasty tumor like hanging off of her body. But the rest of her body is like deformed with like weird, like, I don't even know what like growths or tumors or scars. I don't know. There's weird stuff all over the body, probably from where all these other tumor things had been on before, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So she does that. She proceeds to like rip open this sack and pull out like a blood covered fetus thing, which is obviously one of the deformed dwarf children. And she starts like licking the blood off of it, like licking it clean, like a dog does.
Yep.
And so he's obviously like disturbed by this, which, yes, of course he is. And so she, you know, seeing that, oh, you're not happy with this, you don't really want me anymore, like, you're just trying to trick me, whatever. And so she starts getting upset. So the brood starts, you know, of these crazy dwarf things, wakes back up. And essentially murders Dr. Proximo. He does take out a few of them.
He takes out a good number of them.
Yeah. I mean, he only got 6 shots, but I'm pretty sure he clears out 6 of them. I mean, there's a bunch of dead ones. But they end up, like beaking him to death or whatever. They bite him to death and they kill him. So yeah, the dad tries to go back up there, or no, does he?
No, it's Nola says she'd rather her daughter die than lose her. So she starts sticking the brood on her own kid, who hides in the closet. Who
starts screaming and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now I couldn't remember how she died. I know she died, but I couldn't remember how. But now I remember now. And he goes, okay, you need to stop. You're going to hurt your own daughter. She refuses to stop. So he starts strangling her.
Yep.
And he basically strangles her to death. And then when she dies, the child stops screaming. So that Frank runs back up to where the brood is, and he sees that all the brood are now laying on the ground dead, because their creator is dead.
Their queen's dead, yeah.
Right, yeah. So the queen is dead. The brood is dead. He finds the daughter locked in the closet. He sees dead Dr. Proximo. And then, at the end.
Well, the last scene is they're driving back. She has part of her sleeve torn open, and she starts having some of the small lesions that her mom had.
Right.
Kind of leaving an open ending, like, oh no, is she going to carry on the brood?
Right.
But yes, then that's the end.
Correct.
So, first thoughts for you on this?
Well, yeah. Well, I think, I mean, I'm pretty sure this is the both watching of this for both of us.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
So there's no rewatch on this for
right. Well, I had never seen it. I heard of it, but I had never actually watched it.
Yes.
But yeah, the first thought, I'm watching this. I'm like, are you sure this is a David Cronenberg movie? I mean, because it didn't really feel like that, right? At the time, it wasn't like the kind of weird, body horror stuff that we're used to. It was kind of just like a weird, like, custody drama in the beginning. Yeah. Obviously, until the weird deformed kid showed up. But those scenes were kind of limited. There wasn't like, they weren't like disfigured, like mutant looking things. They just looked like they were kind of pale.
Yeah.
Like they were pale and they had like kind of like beat up hands and face, but like not bad, they just looked like whatever.
It's how much makeup can we put on kids without being too much for kids?
right. Yeah. So like I'm watching this. Oh, yeah, sure. This is a David Cronenberg movie. This really doesn't feel like a David Cronenberg movie. Like there's not a whole lot of, depth to it.
Right.
Obviously it does. When it hits the end, it definitely does. Once
there it is.
Yeah. Once you start talking, once he gets to the shed and talks to Dr. Proximo and you hear how messed up everything actually is, like, okay, yeah, now I see it. And especially when she pulls her dress aside, it's like, there's Cronenberg, like there he is. I get it now. And I guess, it's early in his career. It was 79. He didn't really have the money to do the crazy effects that he probably wanted to do. So he kept it for the reveal at the end, which I think works. But yeah, and I was just kind of as I was watching this, I was just kind of confused as to where the Cronenberg's going to come in, and then of course it happens at the very end. But other than that, up until that point, it was a little sparse.
The legal drama, the custody battle, it quite honestly was boring. Those scenes.
I agree.
Like I understand just for lore, for background, and what have you that it is needed. But yeah, I agree with your first thought. That was my first thought too. I'm like, is this David Cronenberg? I'm like, yeah, he wrote and directed it, and is probably his dipping his toes in the water to see what he's able to do and what he's able to get away with.
Well, yeah, because at this point in his career, he had no pull. He hadn't had a hit yet at all. He was still kind of like a lesser known guy. He still had low budgets,
Right. And so, obviously we heard of this as we realized who David Cronenberg was, but this being 79 and probably time we were renting movies, it probably wasn't in there for us to have even seen to rent on VHS.
I don't remember seeing it then. I remember like later on, when you see like people listing, different directors' movies, and I had seen The Brood under Cronenberg's name, but there was so many other Cronenberg movies that I liked, and I really didn't care. Nobody really said anything to like say, "Hey, I should watch The Brood." Like I didn't really care. So yeah, it wasn't a movie that I was ever pointed towards or had a desire to watch. But yeah, later on, obviously, when I got more into Cronenberg, I meant to watch it. I just have not until now.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know if a rewatch is necessary for this movie. I wasn't completely blown away with it to go, okay, this is like a Cronenberg must watch.
Yeah. The reveal is interesting. And like I said, it's definitely worth watching that first time. But yeah, like after you know what's already going on, there's not really much to rewatch,
Yeah.
Like, again, yeah. Worth watching the first time. Not necessarily, I wouldn't put it on any rewatch list.
No. So highlights for you though.
Highlights would be, obviously the effects towards the end. Those were disturbing. Those were genuinely like, what is happening? Like, especially when she was like licking the blood off of the weird fetus thing.
Yeah.
That's disturbing. It's just weird.
Oh yeah.
And again, that's probably my favorite part of the movie is just that twist. Obviously I'd say anybody who watches this that enjoys it probably says that's probably the best part of the movie, but yeah, so that's the highlight for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The highlight that the body horror more so. And realistically, it had a happy ending, but also had a twist, dark ending, bad ending that very open ended, which I don't think he's ever revisited. Maybe he should. He's doing a lot more revisits on his stuff.
He's got a lot of open-ended stuff.
Yeah.
I'd say most of his movies have weird open endings.
I'm surprised for this being this early in his career that the studio let that happen.
Right. Well, I get they were probably because again they always want to plan for sequels, even if a sequel is probably never going to happen. They might have that surprise hit, and they want to leave things open for a sequel. And I think that's why they let that happen, was just so that if this does surprise hit somewhere, that they have an option to make a sequel. I think
that's fair. That's fair. All right,
but it wasn't a typical open-ended Cronenberg ending. It was a studio sequel possibility ending, which is which is not like him. But again, at this point, he hadn't had a hit, so he didn't have as much input as he would have liked.
Well, yeah, I think because Halloween goes, we can franchise this shit,
right?
And that's what everyone was going towards.
And also an interesting thing is he wrote this movie right after he got divorced. And you can really feel that energy in the movie. Yeah.
What?
Like you can really feel that, like the custody battle and like, Frank and Nola really not liking each other and like dealing with the after effects of their kind of failed marriage. Like you can really feel that divorce energy.
Yes, absolutely. That his wife maybe was a hive mind queen.
Well, yeah, I'm sure he wasn't happy with her. Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
So what's your low point, buddy?
Low point is the custody battle drama. And quite honestly, I don't know if you want to call it a twist, but the Dr. Proxima just changing his mind at the end, it didn't seem like it was so out of left field, I feel.
Here's basically what was going on. How I saw it was that he was for the rest of the movie. He's been kind of like I said, they were leading up to being like a kind of like an antagonist, right?
Yeah.
He was like trying to keep her away. He was trying to like limit like the people that could talk to her. Like he wouldn't let the dad see her. He wouldn't let the Frank see her. Like the only person that could see her was the daughter, and that was even limited. But it was, again, he was keeping other people away from her. And again, during the course of the movie, it seemed like there was like a nefarious purpose for that, right? There was a reason why he was keeping her there. There was even like the weird kind of like romantic subtext, that like he was like, they had their own relationship going, which again was like a weird red herring that only really happened in one scene. But he's doing all these things trying to lead you down the path that he is the bad guy. And then immediately when he showed up at the work shed and he explains what's going on, you realize, he was just trying to keep her away from other people to limit the pain and bad things that could happen from her.
But didn't he say that he tried killing her or wants to kill her, but he loves her so much that he couldn't do it?
Well, again, because his whole deal was the psychoplasmics things, right?
Yeah.
And he could get results out of all these other people, but when he did it with her, she was able to create like whole new beings. She brought it to a whole new level. So for him to kill her would be like destroying his life's work.
That his field is validated.
Right. So I think that was why I don't think it was his love for her. I think it was his love for what she was doing for him. I mean, personally, yes, because this was obviously his passion, but also professionally. And I think that was more to why he, wouldn't kill her versus like a love, like as a just plain old romantic love. I don't think that was it. I think that might have been a part of it. I don't think that was all of it.
I was really expecting him to be part of it and be like the father and like praise the queen.
Yes, no, definitely. Yeah. Until that scene, up until that scene where Frank meets him outside the house and he just like plain old goes like, okay, wait. Like, this is, here's what's going down. Here's what we got to do. Like he finally realizes it has gone too far. I mean, he should have realized that before, but again, all the reasons we mentioned before, clouded his mind. And of course he didn't see it for what it really was.
Right.
So now he does, and he realizes he went too far. So yeah, I mean, there was humanity left in him, but yeah, like in any other, I think, lesser director, lesser writer's mind, it would have ended up being that. It would have been mother and father, hive mind, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have just been Frank being the action hero when he gets to that shed and fighting them somehow, I'm sure that's what it would have been like. But in this one, it just goes, hey, this is messed up. We need to do something about it. And then he dies from the hive mind that he helped create, which is, I think, a fitting, ironic ending.
All right. So what about low points for you?
Low points is that daughter's acting. Oh man, she is terrible. It's like they put her in a room and it's like, okay, can you summon up your most monotone, emotionless, boring voice and just use that all the time? And I know, I'm always too harsh on kids. I know people that are like, like it's just a kid. I get that. But I mean, if you're going to have a movie that centers around a child,
Yep.
you have to have a child that can act. And if the child can't act, then don't have him say anything.
Yeah.
Just have them be there. That's fine too. But if you're going to have a child actually act in scenes and they can't act their way out of a wet paper bag, it takes away from the movie. And this definitely does. She is bad enough to where it like takes away from the movie. Like every time they talk to her, she just got this monotone, boring voice with no emotion or anything in it. It's like,
it's fair. Okay, so we're going to bring back a segment just because when we were discussing what movies to include in this horror list of, David Cronenberg, is it horror? What do you think?
Right. This one, it is, but only really at the end. I mean, to be fair, there are, mutant children killing people throughout the movie, but the main focus of the movie up until like the ending part of it is this like custody battle, is this, kind of a battle for the daughter, right? That's what the main focus of the movie is. And these deaths just kind of seem like a kind of afterthought.
Yeah.
Like they're obviously bad things are happening. They're moving the plot along, but it really feels like the main focus is on that custody battle. And is that horror? No. Are those mutant children murdering people horror? Yes. Is the scene at the end of her like having birthday hive mind that murders people? Yes. Obviously that part is a horror. So this would constitute horror as a whole. But I would say the main focus of the story for like 3/4 of the movie really doesn't feel like it.
So 25% horror.
Right. 25% horror, but the overall plot, it would be a higher percentage. But, how it works out in the end of the film, I would say it's about 25% horror. So, yes, it does constitute horror, but not probably as much as people would like it to be.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Cronenberg does horror, psychological thrillers, weird things like Naked Lunch. But yeah, I mean, it just because of what it is, we did include it in horror. So it's enough horror in his catalog that we included it. And like I said, it's I'd say kind of overlooked in the horror world. I don't hear many people talking about it to this day.
No. And I think that's
43 years later.
I think that's just because Cronenberg has so many other stronger contenders to be like his best movie other than this one. So, I mean, I'd say like on a list of David Cronenberg horror movies, I mean, this one is lower on the list. There's so many other better examples you can give. And I think those are probably what people lead with. And this one's just kind of, left behind. And that's I think rightfully so.
Yeah. All right. So, like I said, number of shotgun shells out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
For you, how many shotgun shells out of 10 would you give this movie?
This movie. See, you got me hooked on these 0.5 answers. I'm going to give it a 5.5 shotgun shells out of 10.
5.5. So you shot 5 and you reloaded 1.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Or I fired and only hit with like one of the 20 pellets. How about that?
That's fair. I'm doing 5. Just it's kind of the middle of the road thing, and I don't even think if I watched this growing up and had this rewatch, nostalgia would have played a part. I think it's not entirely good.
No. Yeah, I mean, again, overall, is it worth watching the one time? Sure. Again, is this a movie you want to watch again? No.
Right.
No.
Yeah. That's if it was rewatchability, it would be a much higher score.
Right. Yeah. So again, that's why it's down to 5 because it's a decent first time watch, but I don't think I'd recommend it to anybody.
Right. No, nor would I. Mm-hmm. Other than you're like, hey, what's one of his first movies? And you're going to have you're going to have Crimes of the Future and this. I know that's
and Shiver. What is it? Shivers or Shiver?
Shiver. Yeah.
I've never seen it, but I know that came out right before this one, and I know it's horror-ish.
horror-ish. Yeah, like I said, it'll be on our list.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually.
Yes. Yeah. All right. So moving on to our next movie. It is Scanners. Let me just say right off the bat, we all know some of the opening scenes in the Scanner part of this movie.
Yeah,
everywhere.
The defining scene of this movie happens like not even 5 minutes in.
Yeah,
it's like right there, and I don't know. And the film, I mean, we'll get to the end of it, but I don't think the film ever lives up to that moment. So it's like you hit the climax 5 minutes in, and then it's just kind of like a plateau after that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I'm sorry, I'll leave that for the end.
Yeah. So let's get into the recap. I'll take charge of this one. Essentially, we start off in like the world's greatest mall.
It's
like
Minnesota.
Huge. It's huge. Like how many levels are in this mall? First and foremost,
10.
So essentially, we see a vagrant that's going through, and he's just kind of, walking through the many courtyards that exist in this mall.
Okay, and just an aside real quick. This is like an 80s movie Vagrant, so like his hair is a little messed up.
Right. And he's wearing a jacket and a hat.
Right, he's wearing a hat. Yeah, he's wearing a jacket and like a knit cap, and that constitutes Vagrant. And like his face is not 100% clean. He's got like a little smudge, I think, on his cheek, and that's what Vagrant is in this era of movies.
Yeah. So he starts going through the mall. He picks up a cigarette, lights it, and starts going up like an escalator with the cigarette. He kind of
this is the golden age where you can smoke anywhere you want.
Right. Yeah. And he kind of sits down at the next level food court after the last food court he was in.
Right.
And he sees, like a half-eaten hot dog, which is like perfectly cut. There's no like bites taken out. It's a perfect cut hot dog, because that's how everyone eats their hot dogs, perfectly cut.
Oh, yeah.
And sits down and starts eating the hot dog. And there's two older women kind of there at the food court, which they seem out of place because, I don't know, maybe the 80s food court mall was fantastic. I don't remember that. And they just kind of start talking about it. He's starting to hear their voices, even though he's 2-ish tables away. And it starts to get to him, and he starts like staring intently at the older woman.
Mm-hmm.
And she starts to have a seizure. And just like you hear like like a hum or background rumble.
Yeah, it's like a weird high-pitched like squealy noise.
Yeah, it's almost like when the Jedi use the Force a little bit, when there's a big concentration, you have that little background noise to it.
Yeah.
And she starts having a seizure, and all of a sudden there's like guys that are in trench coats that happen to be right there, realizing, oh crap, we know what he is, and start chasing him through the mall. And he's like parkouring a little bit through the mall.
Yeah.
Like he's going up steps, and he jumps and grabs onto like the moving escalator handle, and they have like tranq guns, and they shoot him in the hand, which looks painful.
Right.
Huge needle hanging out of his hand, and so he eventually collapses, and surprisingly doesn't get caught up in the escalator at the top. I was like, his coat's gonna get dragged into it.
Right, unconscious, like rolls up to the edge of that escalator. Yeah. It's like, oh, he's for sure gonna lose that coat.
Yeah. So they take him in, and he is brought into essentially a observation room.
Mm-hmm. Like an observation theater, right?
Yeah. And we meet Dr. Paul, and he's telling people to hurry up. Paul Ruth, and he's telling people to hurry up as like 100 people slowly make their way into the theater to do this.
And to be fair, he's going, hurry up the whole time.
He says hurry up. He says hurry up
moving any faster.
Twice for the first 10 people, and there's still like 90 more people coming out there. He says nothing to.
Right. Well, I think he realizes that, okay, this isn't gonna work. Like, this hurry up is not doing anything. But he's still obviously annoyed that they're moving slow.
Yeah. And he's essentially being explained that Val, is a, quote, scanner. He's one of like 237 that exist that they know of.
Right.
That have telepathy, that can do, psychokinesis, that can read minds, all that stuff. He gives him a drug, a fictional drug, ephemeral, I believe. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it essentially nullifies his scanner powers. And he starts explaining to him what he is, showing him some videos of what people can do. And then, meanwhile, I believe this is the point where we get our scene then, right?
Yeah, it's right around that point. I mean, I mean, these kind of two things were happening at the same time.
Right.
But that's whatever. Yeah, but these things are happening at the same time, but they're independent. But yeah.
So we'll call him Discount 80s David Cross.
Yeah, that's fair. With the big old rapist glasses.
Yeah. Is like he's been blue himself.
Right.
Is like in this, I'd say like not an auditorium, but like almost like a college room classroom where he's down at the desk and there's people like 15 people there watching him.
Something like that, yeah.
And he's like, hey, I'm gonna show you guys that I'm a scanner, what it looks like to be a scanner. This may hurt, and we have a volunteer. And so a guy volunteers, and it happens to be Michael Ironside. And he sits down and like he starts trying to scan Michael Ironside. And he starts convulsing, starts going crazy, and you hear the weird noise, but you don't really see much from Michael Ironside except his. I mean, you see what some of his like some bladder effects on his face a little bit.
A
little bit.
At this point, I don't think they do.
Okay.
Maybe. I don't know.
I thought it was just a little bit, but you can tell he's getting uncomfortable. Like it's like he's trying to block him from being in his mind. Fortify your mind,
right?
to block him. So he's actively blocking him, and then we get the world's best scene from this movie. Everyone knows 80s Discount David Cross head blows up spectacularly in front of lots of people.
Right. How did they achieve that head blowing up effect?
Oh, I don't remember.
A shotgun. Of course.
Shotgun. Yeah,
of course it's a shotgun. They had his fake head all filled with meat and fake blood and shit or whatever. They literally just put a shotgun underneath it and just pulled the trigger. That big head explosion is just what happens when a shotgun hits a dummy head that fucking close. But I also got to say, I love the weird looks that they get when they're like reading minds or like trying to stop people from reading minds. They're like, they're like twitching and like shaking all over
they're
and like
constipated. They're constipated.
They're great. They are fantastic. They're always a source of amusement every time I watch this movie. It's great.
Yeah. But I believe also that he gets captured by Consec, who is a company that's trying to recruit scanners to stop. Yeah.
After his head explodes, he just tries to casually walk out of the room, and they're like, "Oh, wait, hold on a minute! Like, you gotta stick around."
Yeah. And Consec is essentially a group that controls scanners or has like this ring of scanners, and they realize there's an underground group of scanners that's trying to actively oppose them. And we know that he's being led by this Daryl
Revik. Yeah, they always say it like that. Revik. Yeah, it's always like a curse word when they say it.
Yeah. And they think there's a new guy in charge of security, and he's arguing against that comes later. Essentially, Revik is captured, and he starts scanning people in essentially cop cars or SWAT cars. Essentially, forces them to crash, burn. The other go out there, and they shoot each other themselves, and he kind of just walks away. And so they're like, "Hey, he killed 6 of us, and we have a new guy in charge of security." And he's talking to the doctor in charge of these. He's like, we think there's a mole in here because, no one should have known this happened. He was able to get away. He wasn't actually drugged. So that at one point they were going to sedate him, and the guy did it to himself versus Revik when he was being captured. So he didn't get the femoral into his system, so he's able to escape. So it was almost planned that way.
It wasn't planned. He controlled his mind.
You took it as controlled mind? I took it as the part of the mole.
Well, he was doing his head twitches that he does when he's reading minds. So, like, when he went to go inject it into his hand, he controlled his mind to inject it into his own hand instead of his hand.
Yeah.
So the doctor and everybody else thinks that he was drugged, but he wasn't. And no, I don't think the doctor was in on it. I think he just controlled his mind to make him not do it.
That's fair. So yeah, there's this whole bunch of corporate espionage, and Cameron Vale is working with the doctor, being watched, and say, here's how you control your powers. And then he kind of sits down in front of like the ultimate Zen master who can control his heart and breathing, to has that such control of his body. He knew whatever he wants to. Like, if he wants his heart to stop, he can make his heart stop.
Right.
And so essentially he's like, hey, try to increase his heart rate. And he's going to be able to, if it gets too much, he'll be able to control his own body and lower it. So don't worry about it.
Right. Yeah.
And Vale is doing it, and he's like, okay, stop it.
Because the guy's like obviously dying of a heart attack.
Right. So, Vale was able to realize that he's stronger than the guy who has like the ultimate control, mind over body, control of his body, I would say.
Well, yeah, and like at the end of it, when he's like, stop it, and he doesn't stop, and then when he does stop, he's like in total complete control, and it's like, and now his training is complete. Like,
right.
Like literally, it was like one scene, like, he had no control of his powers in the one scene. Now he has complete control of his powers, and he's like totally in control of everything. And then they decide this is the best choice. They're like, yeah, this guy who like literally had 1 day of training, let's make him our new like detective / spy. He's gonna go out and figure everything out. Yeah, good call.
Yes, with your training is now complete. Go infiltrate the underground.
Right.
Essentially, is what happens, right?
Right.
So yeah, he does infiltrate the underground. He starts meeting a group of different scanners. And meanwhile, we see the new head of security. I think he's head of security, meeting with this unknown man, discussing stuff behind the scenes, realizing that the doctor or Keller is the mole, and who could he possibly be working with? We don't see him, but god damn it, we know Michael Ironside's voice.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, they didn't disguise his voice in any way whatsoever. Yeah. Like, so if you've ever seen Michael Ironside, who has a very distinctive voice,
yes,
like you can very obviously tell it was him. Yes.
Yeah, it's clearly Michael Ironside. We don't see it the first meeting; it's very deep throatish, but the second meeting, they turn around the corner. It's Michael Ironside. No shit.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, everybody knows that.
Yeah. And so they're starting to investigate. They're trying to figure out how to reach Revik. They introduce, an artist who's able to, I guess, ease his scanner abilities by like putting it into art.
It's the same creepy comb-over guy that had the throat cancer from The Brood.
Yes. So he visit his quite disturbing art studio. He's like, you got to tell me where he is. I think he brings the woman from the group that they met.
Well, because he first goes to an art gallery. That's all of his art, and he's not there, but he like basically scans his agent to get his location from.
Yeah.
And then when he's scanning the agent, that lady saw him do it. And so because she was a scanner too, she knew what he was doing. That's why she knew of him, whatever. But that's how we knew where to go.
Does he go to the group next, or is that the art museum first?
No, he goes to the guy's art house after.
Yeah.
He goes to the gallery to find out where he is, and then that's how he goes and talks to him.
So he's talking about that. He's like trying to bring him in, try to get Revik's information. And then all of a sudden they have like 4 people from Consec or whoever. Or no, were they scanners? Or they're just people?
They don't say if they were scanners or not, but I'm pretty sure they were. If they weren't, they were people working directly for Revit.
Yeah.
Who's with shotguns.
For a shotgun, yes. And start shooting up the place. They shoot, was it Pierce is the artist?
Yeah, I think his name was, Benjamin Pierce, or I think his
something
name
like that. Yeah. Like that. And so Cameron's able to scan and control all 4 of them.
Yep.
And kind of throw them about a bit. Doesn't seem like they got really hurt, but enough to kill them.
They didn't get really hurt. They're just dead.
Right. They're like, I got thrown into this clay thing. I'm dead.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, this is how movies work.
Right. And Pierce was shot pretty well.
A lot. Yeah, he was shot quite a few times.
So, Pierce is dying. Cameron is able to scan him and figure out that there's a group of people that are opposing him. Revik. And so he kind of goes down to the AA meeting of scanners trying to oppose. So you have ComSec, who's trying to control scanners when they have 0 other than Vale. You have the underground controlled by Revik. And you have this other group of scanners trying to undermine this underground group of scanners.
Right.
It's a shadow organization inside its shadow organization.
Exactly. Very clear and concise.
Right. So they're realizing that, they try to go meet this group. They're all in this van essentially, and they all get shot up.
Well, first they have their AA circle where they're all interconnected.
Yeah.
And then the guys come in with shotguns, of course.
Yeah.
Kill a bunch of them, and then they escape. And the ones that escaped got in a van, and then they get shot up in the van.
Yes.
So that the only people that survive all of these shotguns, because that's the only guns in this movie are shotguns. Everybody gets shot with shotguns. Is the only people left is the leader of their group, whose name is, I think, Kim is her name.
Kim, yeah. Kim.
And then Cameron,
Vale, yeah.
Mr. Milquetoast protagonist, yes.
Yeah. And then somehow, they learn about a pharmaceutical group, which they just nonchalantly go into. And learn that Revik is there, and he's distributing large amounts of a drug.
Well, they found out because one of the people that tried to kill him with the shotgun, they searched him and they found a little vial of the ephemeral drug, and it had a symbol on it, and then that symbol is the symbol of that company. That's how they found
it. Of ComSec, yeah.
I mean, it's a loose interpretation, but they did try to have an explanation.
Yeah, and he goes and quote, hacks a computer in there and finds a program called Ripe.
Right. I love these old movies with computers because they don't know how to okay, well, how do you get information from a computer? You have to search for it. Can you just ask the computer the information? No, it's not a being. It doesn't think. You can't ask it a question. But all of these movies around this time period, they're always typing in questions. And the computer is just answering the questions. Do you realize what level of computing AI it would have to get to be able to answer a question?
Yes.
But all computers in this time era, we're talking, even Aliens got one. Every movie, they're just typing in questions. The Thing has a scene where he does that. Yep. He's typing in how long would it take, this organism to take over the world? All these, just asking questions to a computer, and they're able to directly answer them. I don't understand where that came from, but it just became this era of computers. It is the way to get information. You just type a question and it tells you the answer, and then that's the end of the scene.
Except for realistically, when we were playing those text-based RPG fantasy adventures, go left. Don't know what left is.
Yeah.
Shit.
Exactly. or again, how long did it take you how to run the stupid thing?
Yeah.
Right. You put the disc in, you're like, how do I get it to run? You're run disc, run C, whatever it is. Yeah. You could never get the thing to run. And these guys that don't know anything about computers are typing in questions into a computer and it's just answering them. It's ridiculous. But anyway, that was computers in this era. Is you just type in a question and it answers you, and that's the magic of computers.
And everyone knows how to do this.
Right. Yeah. Of course.
Never touched a computer before. How do we get in this computer? Type. I'm in.
Right.
No.
Computer, how do I access MacGuffin?
Right.
Beep, beep. This is how you do it. Oh, great. Continue with the rest of the story.
Yeah. So, so they find this stuff out. They find that, I believe they find that the doctor is part of this as well. That he, and Kim and Vale go back to Consec. They're being interrogated. The doctor gets Vale and starts talking about, like, you founded this by, this pharmaceutical company. I don't know what it does now. It was doing this huge thing of stuff and, like, putting it into pregnant women. Essentially, I believe that too. Like, they're trying to create more scanners.
Yeah. I think, what did they call the program? Ripe? They never say what that means. I'm like, if you're never going to explain what the word is, why do you use such a weird word like ripe?
Yeah,
it's just bizarre. But anyway, yeah, they don't find anything directly in the place, although they do escape, and they what's his guy, creepy security guy, shows his hand that he is now. Yeah, he is. They knew it was him before, but now they officially know because he tries to kill her. She has to scan him to stop.
Right. He turns off, like, the security camera, which is weird buttons.
Yeah.
She scans
in the room
him.
that he's in, of course.
Right. And then, like, he pushes, like, the big red do not press button, the alarm button.
Right. But they all escape. Nothing really happens there. Like, they had to scan a few people to get away, but nothing really happens.
Well, the doctor gets killed by Keller.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. There was an event.
Yeah. So, but before he's dying, he goes, hey, computers have nervous systems. You can hack nervous systems. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, you could just scan it like a mind because it's all electricity.
It's nervous system.
Yeah, great. Right. No problem.
Yeah. Yep. So, they escape, and he's like, hey, I'm going to call into the computer.
Right.
From a phone booth.
Yeah, there are so many things wrong with this scene. I don't even know where to start. But yeah, so again, he hacks by calling the modem of the computer, essentially. On a payphone, and then he's able to, like, communicate. Yeah, he's able to communicate telepathically with the computer and download all the information into his brain in a readable format somehow.
Yep.
He's able to do all this, but I think my favorite part is when they show all of these dudes, sitting in the old-fashioned mainframe that still has, like, the spinning tape mainframes,
And they realize they're being hacked.
Yeah, they realize they're being hacked, and they're like, what can we do? There's nothing we can do. Like, there's nothing you can do. You just said it's hooked up to the phone line, right?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't just unplug it from the phone line? Problem solved, right?
Or turn it on. Yeah.
Right. What are you talking about? Just unplug it or cut the wire. Like, what do you mean there's nothing you can do?
Yeah.
Again, it was stupid. I mean, I understand they were trying to make this scene, but, like, it's just ridiculous to think that there's nothing we can do. Like, wow, really?
Yeah. So yeah, he explodes the computer with his mind because it's a nervous system. So he did the head blow to the mainframe and blew up, killing Keller because they couldn't stop the hack.
Okay, well, to be fair, Keller killed himself because he was the one that told him, like, oh, he's a part of this computer now. If we kill the computer, we might kill him. And so they're like, oh, we have a self-destruct, it's going to do things. And funny, they said it multiple times. They're like, it's just going to be a data self-destruct. Like, you're not going to see an explosion.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, see, look, we turned it off. See, look, there's no explosion. Boom, explosion. It was very stupid. I guess because his brain was in the computer, which makes it explode.
I guess.
But yeah, again, there was no damage done to Mr. Milquetoast. I mean, again, aside from the phone receiver, like, melting.
Yeah.
But he just put it down and he was totally fine. I mean, yeah, so they, like, destroyed their entire building and all of their data.
And melting plastic in your hands, perfectly cool and calm and doesn't.
Well, he was wearing a rubber glove. He was obviously wearing a rubber glove. I think they tried to disguise it as a leather glove, but it was very obviously a rubber glove.
So, yeah, they go visit, a doctor. Val and Kim go visit a doctor. And they realize that this is being prescribed to pregnant women, and they're becoming scanners. Revik comes in, kidnaps Vale and Kim and bring them back to the plant, and they realize that they're, that Dr. Ruth was their father, essentially, that they're brothers.
What a twist!
What a twist! Yeah, so they're just kind of going, and exposition dump is they develop it as a sedative for pregnant women. That the side effect is they become the most powerful scanners in the world. So Revik and Vale are the two most powerful scanners.
Because they were the first ones. Yeah.
Yeah. So they try on. He's creating a new generation of scanners. That's why he's doing all this stuff, and going into it, and like, hey, this is what we're gonna do. So they start having like a massive scanner standoff.
Yeah, it's a mind battle.
Yes, battle of the wits. And Vale is kind of losing. His eyes explode or melt out. His body starts getting burned alive.
Well, I forgot all the weird like bladder stuff. Like there's a lot of like bladder, like vein bladders underneath their arms, and they're like blood like spurting out. And then there's like bladders in their face that make it look like veins that are squirting out and everything.
Yeah,
it's interesting looking.
Yeah, so it's a big standoff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of ends like, oh, Vale is destroyed. He's dead. He's burnt. And then we cut. Kim comes in, cuts, and we see Revik. His scars have vanished. His eyes are now blue, and now he speaks in Vale's voice.
And he has Vale's contacts in.
Yes. Essentially alluding to that he switched consciousness with Revik.
Yeah.
And that's the movie.
Yep.
So yeah, that's an interesting take on it. So my first thought, like, I seen so many bits and pieces of this. Like, I don't know if I ever sat down and watched it in its entirety. Right?
Yeah, I mean, that was the same thing with me. It was one of those movies I always assumed that I had seen all the way through. I mean, obviously, the head explosion I had seen like a million times, because not only is it like a meme, but I mean, like they put it in like everything talking about like effects or like the horror genre in general. They always have that scene in there because it's a very classic scene. But I mean, I knew what scanners were. I knew what the basic plot of the movie was. I knew all that stuff, so I had assumed that I had watched it. And then about a year ago, maybe 6 months ago, I watched it all the way through. There was definitely parts of that I'd never seen before. So I'm like, well, I guess I'd never just sat down and watched this whole movie, but I had seen so many bits and parts of it that I assumed that I did, and I basically did. I mean, obviously that filled in a couple of gaps that watching it all the way through, but I had basically known the gist of it for a while. So
I mean, first thought was, I don't know why I never sat down and watched all of this, quite honestly.
Yeah,
just like you're saying, because we've seen so many bits and pieces that it was essentially, we've seen it. We know so much about it that is there. But I mean, it was, to me, this was Cronenberg. Like, this was the first thing that you can go, this is David Cronenberg.
Well, this is the movie that made him, essentially. Yeah. This is the movie that gave him enough clout to make the weirder stuff that he makes later on. This is the movie where they were like, okay, you can do good stuff that, is successful. So yeah, you can pretty much do whatever you want, or you have enough clout to be able to swing people to do what you want. And that's what this movie was. Yeah. Right.
And obviously it was popular enough that we have 3 more scanners, and we have a spin-off, Scanner Cop, which eventually we'll probably get to. I don't think I've seen anything past scanners.
I had never seen it all the way through from beginning to end until about a year ago, and I had never seen any of the sequels that I know of. I mean, I may have seen parts, but I don't think I've seen any of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is definitely worth a rewatch.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, I've watched it I think 3 times in the last year, simply because I was like, there's so many things. I mean, it's interesting on a rewatch. I mean, you catch a couple things here and there,
Yeah.
but it's fun. It's a fun movie.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, definitely stuff we should go through. Highlights for me are the effects. Like the exploding head, this is early on stuff of bladder work. It's probably in its infancy of bladder work at this point in time. Colin did a lot of it too, but it's nice to see the incorporation of new techniques in this movie. Just like I said, the effects, the practical effects, the body horror were really good. Those are my highlights. What about for you?
No doubt. I mean, head explosion is fantastic. The sheer number of shotguns and all the times that they're fired in this movie is also amazing. I mean, it's just fun overall. I mean, yeah, obviously the head explosion is as I was saying in the beginning of this, it is like the climax of the film. It really is. It feels like that head explosion is like, oh man, and then the movie is just a plateau after that point. It doesn't really hit that spike again until I guess arguably the mind battle between Vale and Revik does get close to it, but it really feels like that head explosion is the climax of the film, and the rest of it's just coasting on the way out. But yeah, so I would say that's definitely good for me too.
Yeah. Low points. Like we just briefly touched on, the twist that we didn't expect to see, that we weren't supposed to see coming. I mean, maybe in 1981 we didn't know who Michael Ironsides was to know that plot twist was going to come, but it was so obvious watching this.
Well, again, maybe at that time, I mean, Michael Ironside, wasn't as iconic as he is now, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, maybe if he wasn't in movies all the time, maybe you wouldn't have noticed it. But I mean, yeah, I've seen him in so many things because he's in a lot of other movies that I really like. That I know his voice is a very kind of signature voice, and it's very obviously him. They didn't even try to disguise it or anything.
Right.
So yeah. So I mean, obviously you see it coming a mile away.
That along with the corporate espionage and shadow conspiracies, it was, I think, it was very predictable.
Honestly. Yeah. I mean, that's fair.
Honestly, like the new head of security. Well, no shit, he's going to be the mole. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
What about low points for you, though?
Low points for me would be Mr. Milquetoast. Cameron Vale, the guy who's the protagonist of the film, is just such a boring actor. I mean, he's very, very monotone. I mean, a lot of his scenes, you're like, really? That's the emotion you're going with here? I mean, it's just very boring. Even at the end when he's gets all these revelations that he's Revik's brother and that all these things are happening because of him. He's supposedly the second most powerful scanner in the world. And he's just kind of oh, that's amazing. I mean, he's got this boring voice that does not work, I think, for this movie, for what they're trying to do. I think they tried to I think they saw that coming. There's a couple of scenes and conversations where they kind of say oh, he's kind of lacking emotions because he was, a scanner for so long and no one told him how to live among people that he just doesn't, communicate effectively. They had a couple of those scenes where I think they were trying to justify why he's such a bad actor.
He can't be part of society. Yeah.
Right. I think I mean, hell, if that's what he was trying to do, I mean, he succeeded because he's definitely wow, this guy is terrible. So if you wanted to make it seem like he was a bad actor because he can't deal with emotions or whatever, succeed, right? You did great. Yeah. But if this is just supposed to be a standard acting experience, which it's insinuated that it is, he's just terrible. It's just bad.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Again, the rest of the movie is interesting and fun enough, but yeah, Mr. Milquetoast is definitely the worst part of it. But yeah, again, mostly things are happening around him. He doesn't really interact with things very often, so it's kind of forgiven. But yeah,
he's just there.
Yeah, he is terrible.
Yeah. All right. Is it horror? I would say yes and no. Obviously, it's more of the shadow organization. It's more of like an X-Files ish type case. I feel they did something very similar in X-Files where they had people that are able to like make people see other things that were part of some of this like Vietnam experiment. Obviously, this X-Files episode came out like 12 years later,
right?
But you know, the idea of it's very sci-fi ish.
Yeah, I mean, again, horror is probably a very limited, small element of this movie. I mean, I would say arguably this movie probably isn't horror. Just because, I mean, it has horror elements. I mean, obviously, like people invading your brain and taking you over or making you do things, that's horror, right? I mean, that's, that's losing control of yourself. That's an element of body horror. I get that. But the way that it's presented, it's more of like a sci-fi adventure story than it is a horror, like you should be afraid of these things story. It's not really presented that way.
Well, you should be afraid of Big Pharma. But
I'm saying like all the way that these things are presented, it's not presented in a horror like you should be scared way. It's like a adventure, like figuring out more pieces of the puzzle as we go along way.
Yeah.
And again, that's why I would say it's not really presented in a horror way. Does it have horror elements? Sure, but I would say this movie is not horror. I would say in an overall percentage, I would say like, I don't know, 3% horror.
So even less than The Brood.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, The Brood has obvious like body horror elements. Like the end of the movie that is horror. I mean, there's no way around.
Oh yeah.
Scanners really isn't. I mean, it really plays out like a sci-fi, adventure story than it does a horror story.
Yeah, that's quite fair.
Again, there are elements of body horror. Again, losing control of yourself and being controlled. Those are elements of body horror. So I'm not saying there's zero, but there's very little. Very little.
Right. All right. So I will go first for number of shotgun shells, even though there is probably like 100 plus.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot fired in this movie.
Overall, it was good. It definitely deserves, especially for the effects, the love that it got.
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely especially for its time period.
Yeah, so I'm going 7. 7 shotgun shells out of 10. How about you?
I'll agree. I mean, 7 shotgun shells out of 10. I mean, I think 7 is right where you hit rewatch territory. Where a 7 qualifies you as, I'll watch that movie again, and I think it's right there. It's not a movie that I want to watch a lot, but it is definitely a movie worth rewatching later on. I mean,
absolutely,
it's a fun movie. Again, the effects, the head explosion is definitely worth rewatching just by itself.
Right, and you can see why it's on so many lists of great scenes in horror movies, best deaths,
right,
and that.
And again, that's the funny thing is everybody wants to include scanners in horror movie lists simply because so they can talk about that explosion scene.
Oh, absolutely.
Like that's why it's on all these horror lists, because of that scene. But like you take that scene out and it's not a horror movie. It's more of like a sci-fi conspiracy movie.
Yeah, it's a deep throat, undercover, big corporation plans to do whatever.
Right. And I know that it's very commonly considered horror. Overall, I would say it's probably there's many other genres it would belong in before horror, but
sci-fi.
I'm not gonna take ownership of it. You can put it wherever you like. I'm just saying, for me, it doesn't feel like a horror movie.
Yeah. Okay. Next, we have VideoDrome. Yes, Mr. Salem, why don't you go ahead and lead us through this one?
I will. Okay, so VideoDrome. I don't know. I think I'll save all my discussion for afterwards. So we'll just go for the recap. I may have to go back on certain points here because there's a lot of weird stuff happening. And sometimes, I might forget something weird that happened earlier and I'll have to go back to it. So forgive me if I have to do that, but just a warning ahead of time. Anyway, so we open up on Max Wren, who is James Woods. He is essentially a guy who runs a like kind of low rent cable like channel in like, the early 80s. So this is like kind of the dawning of cable television. and like what you can do and what you can put on cable television, and kind of like, channels developing their own personalities and kind of stuff like that in the cable world, again, in this time. Anyway.
Right.
So we open up on him being woken up by his secretary on a video, like kind of notification of like, here's your agenda for the day. Right. She's like going through his meetings and things and stuff. I believe they just put that in there to just kind of show what video can do, kind of show like, oh, this is, like a futuristic thing you can do with video is you can record, your secretary can record a video for you the night before, and you can set your timer on your VCR to wake up to your secretary telling you what you have to do that day. I'm pretty sure that's the only reason it's in there. But anyway, yeah, she just basically says you have a meeting. You have to go to that, more or less what happens. So he wakes up, he goes to this meeting, and it's with like a couple of Japanese guys trying to sell him like a Japanese softcore porn show.
Okay.
I believe it's called Samurai Dreams. So he ends up buying it. He goes back to his channel, right, called Civic TV. And he talks to his other partners. He shows them like parts of the movie. And they're like, oh, what should we do with this? What can we do with this kind of thing? Just kind of showing, this is like their job. This is what they do with, interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So they're, trying to make the decision on what they want to do there. So then he goes and talks to his like, what is he, like a pirate, kind
bootleg
guy who like, this is back in the days of like, where you could like pirate satellite signals and like get television channels you aren't supposed to see from like other parts of the world, because like, again, this is a new technology, the whole, satellite and cable TV. This is brand new at this time. So yeah, this is all this stuff, so
it's like what underground bootleg shit he got from
right. Yeah. So like, this is the guy who like scans all these other like stations of the world and stuff, finds out what's going on, and then tells Max about it. And then he kind of decides what he wants to move, what he thinks the next thing is going to be. And he's going to move his channel towards that because he wants to be like edgy. Like that's what people are going to watch, So he sees this show and it's called VideoDrome. And it's essentially, he only gets a minute of it at this point in time. And it's essentially like two guys in weird suits, like torturing and appearing to murder a girl.
Yeah.
And we only get a minute of it. It's a very quick thing. And he's like, oh, that's all I can get before they change the signal. So that's, I'll work on it. But for right now, all I can get is this minute.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay. So then he cuts to him on a talk show. And it's him. He represents like the television side of this argument. There's Debbie Harry, who is now appearing in here. Debbie Harry from Blondie, that Debbie Harry. She is she plays like the radio aspect of it. She plays like a radio host who does like kind of like you call in, I'll help you mentally kind of radio show that they
helpline.
Right. Yeah. And then there's another guy who is Brian Oblivion is his name, and there's an O apostrophe Oblivion, so it's like that's his name. Anyway, and he's on a television, right? And this is 83, so this is an old dial television, and he's on this pedestal, and he's just appearing there. So they're discussing essentially. Again, in this time period, I'll go into more of this later, but they're trying to say that like saturation of like sex and violence that are coming out of the new TV and cable and stuff like this is contributing to the downfall of society, more or less. Right? These people are becoming kind of desensitized, overstimulated. This is this good or bad? And so of course Max Friend is like, this is great because that's his television channel. That's what he does. Debbie Harry is kind of like on the opposite side. Like, I don't know, it could be one, it could be the other, we should probably watch out. And then Brian Oblivion just goes off on this weird rant about like how TV is going to be the wave of the future. And he kind of sort of even touches on the, kind of like online handles in the future where he talks about how he's like, my real name is not Brian Oblivion. That's my chosen name that I'm going to present to you in this video world. Again, kind of, touching on usernames in like the internet world, which is again, a fiction at this point in time, but really touching on what that is going to become.
And pretty accurate.
Right. Yeah. Again, that's again, I'll get into why. There's a lot of reasons why I like this movie, but that's one of them. It pretty accurately kind of predicts what's going on there. So essentially, Max Wren, switches to like hitting on Debbie Harry, and they just kind of cut out at that point. He goes and visits her. Well, actually, he goes back to the pirate guy. The pirate guy now has a whole hour-long video of this VideoDrome. Right. And so he's going to go and watch that. But before he goes and watches that, he goes to Debbie Harry's work and sees her interviewing some guy on TV. They end up, I guess going on a date, but they just show them coming back to his house. And she's like, oh, we got some stuff to watch. And he's like, well, I don't know. And she's like, you got any porn? I mean, like immediately starting with, going off the deep end. He's like, oh, I don't know. And so she's looking through stuff and she finds this VideoDrome tape that he's got. And he's like, oh, I don't think you want to watch that. That's not good stuff. And she's like, oh, I could take it. Let's watch it. And so they're watching
very
it.
Turned on by it.
Yes. It's watching it, seeing that it's like torture porn essentially. And they're getting all weirdly turned on about it. And there's like a really weird sex scene where he's like piercing her ears with a needle. There's like
cigarettes out on her.
Well, not that happens later, but yes, essentially the same thing. She's like asking him to cut her with a knife on her shoulder, and she's obviously already been cut a bunch of times on her shoulder, and he's like, well, who did that? And she's like, oh, just a friend. But essentially they're showing that like basically Max and her are like the personification of what people think is going to happen to you if you're overexposed to sex and violence, right? She becomes like, she's integrated the two. Sex and violence are the same thing. They're obviously trying they're obviously trying to show that, she's very open to, having sex with people when she first meets them, and she's mixed violence in with it. She's like the personification of what they think overstimulation and desensitization is going to lead to. Whereas Max is the one that not only is he already there, but he's also like pushing it on everyone else.
Yeah.
So they have this weird sex scene. Kind of sort of hallucinations start at this point because while they're having the sex scene, they're like on the set of VideoDrome.
Yes.
Which is just like a room with like hooks on the walls and like a weird clay background. But yeah, so at this point, like they have officially started. So he, the weird things start kind of happening. So he goes to the cathode ray mission, which is Brian Oblivion's kind of like, I guess, like charitable organization, but also his office. Yeah. So he goes there, and it's like a weird mission to where like homeless people come in, they give them food, and they let them watch TV for hours. I guess it's odd, but he goes and he goes to try to meet with Brian Oblivion. Brian Oblivion is not there, but he talks to the daughter, Bianca Oblivion. And she basically says, oh yeah, they're plugging these homeless people back into the switchboard of life by letting them watch TV, and they'll rejoin society because they're doing that. She knows that, he's looking for VideoDrome because he wants to put it on his channel at this point, right? Because this is going to be the next big thing. So he wants to put it on this channel. So he finds out that, there was a scene. Sorry, I'm already doing the backwards. There's a scene where he talks to like it's like an agent lady that brings him in movies to like put on his show. And she brings in like some weird kind of, classic softcore porn. He's not interested because it's boring, right? It's just porn. I put that in quotes. Yeah. So he wants something different. So he asks her to find out about VideoDrome because he thinks it's the next thing. He wants her to find out about it. He'll give her percentage if she finds out about it. She comes back to him. She says, I only got one name, Brian Oblivion. That's it. That's all I know. Yep. So that's why he goes and talks to her. Sorry. My first digression. So that's when he talks to Bianca. He's like, I need to talk to him about VideoDrome. I want to put it on my channel. And she's like, oh, well, he's not here, but I'll ask him his response, and then he'll give you a video response because he doesn't ever talk to anyone in person. He only deals in video monologues is how he communicates. And she's like asking him what format he would like his response in, right? Which he never actually does answer.
No.
But it's apparently VHS.
Well, of course, because you can't have beta; it would be useless.
Right. Interesting thing is the next movie here they do use a beta video camera to record everything. But
yeah.
So anyway, he talks to her. You know, she says she's going to get the response from him. So he goes back home. Debbie Harry, shows back up. They have like another like date at this point. And this point he goes to, they have like this is where the weird sex scene where she's like literally putting out cigarettes on her chest,
yes,
it's weird. And anyway, at this point she says, I'm going out of town for work. I'm going to Pittsburgh because at this point they had found out that VideoDrome was being transmitted from Pittsburgh. So she said she's going to go to Pittsburgh for work, but she's also going to try to find out about VideoDrome while she's there. So she kind of exits. And then he goes to watch the video from Brian Oblivion because he just gets it at this point. And this is where we get another first hallucination where like he touches the tape and it like breathes, like it like expands, like it takes a breath.
Yes.
And he's like, kind of freaked out by it, throws it on the ground, but eventually picks it up, puts it in. Brian Oblivion, basically explains to him what VideoDrome kind of is in very broad strokes. Like he doesn't give details at this point. But he basically says it's like a new way of communicating with people and like kind of sort of controlling them. And as he's talking, like one of the guys from VideoDrome, but he does address him by name. He just says his name Max. So it is supposedly a customized message for him. And then one of the guys that's the torturer guys from VideoDrome comes out and starts strangling Brian Oblivion, as he's watching it. Right.
Yeah.
So he's like trying to talk to the screen and of course he can't answer because it's a monologue. So he, basically dies. The video ends. And he's, gets more information like, okay, this is obviously being used by someone to like control minds in some way, shape or form, but he doesn't have any further info. So he's trying to get more info. He goes back to, Bianca Oblivion. That's when he finds out that Brian Oblivion doesn't actually exist. He died a year ago. And essentially they just put together bits and pieces from like old tapes of his to like make him say new things. Because he
welcome Max to Vietnam.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you'd assume there'd be a lot more like goofy cuts and jitters if they're cutting tape together, but whatever. These are experts. All right. Right. Yeah, I guess. Right. So essentially at that point he realizes that that's, he doesn't exist. VideoDrome is there. She gives him more information that VideoDrome has actually caused him to have a brain tumor. And that brain tumor started giving him hallucinations, and stuff like that. So like, obviously this thing is like controlling his mind. It like put a tumor in his brain. That's why he's seeing things. The same thing is now happening to Max. So he's trying to figure out what he can do about it. And then of course he gets a phone call at that time from this other guy who's Barry Convex is his name. And he's like the CEO for like some big corporation that makes glasses.
Something like that. Yeah.
So, he gets a car comes for him, picks him up, goes to the location. They basically explain like, yeah, you got VideoDrome. You were hit by this signal. It's, already created a tumor in your brain. You're already hallucinating. There's no way out of it, but you seem to, right. You seem to be doing better than everyone else does at this time. So we'd like to like experiment on you. So they put like this goofy, weird helmet and they say they're going to record one of his hallucinations. So he has a hallucination of Debbie Harry coming back. Yep. Wasn't it Nikki? I think her name was Nikki in the movie.
Something like that, yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, she comes back. They end up having like this weird kind of, like the sex scene where she's like in the TV and the TV's like breathing and like her lips are on the screen, but the screen is like pulsating and stretching in and out. And then like he ends up like moving, like pushing himself like into the TV. And when he does that, he ends up on the set of VideoDrome with the television.
You missed him whipping it.
No, this is literally the beginning of the scene I'm talking about right now.
Okay. Right.
So he's in the set of VideoDrome with the television that has Debbie Harry on it doing her moaning thing, right?
Yep.
And so then he has a whip and he starts whipping the TV from behind. So he can't see what's on the screen, but I guess he can hear what's happening. So he's whipping Debbie Harry, who is on the set of Videodrome, on the television, even though he's already on the set. So he's whipping it. And eventually over time, it changes from being like a kind of like a pleasurable moan to being like a painful moan. But he can't see that. But it looks like the lady who is the agent that he told to go look about Videodrome, who tried to sell him the porn earlier that he wasn't interested in. And it shows her wearing the same dress, but she's getting whipped and she's obviously not enjoying it, right?
Yes.
So then, he wakes up in the morning in his own bed. He doesn't know how he got there. He wakes up in his own bed, and next to him in the bed is the dead lady, right? So not Debbie Harry, the weird older agent lady is now dead in the bed next to him. So he panics. He calls his pirate friend. I don't know why the pirate friend is the person he calls, but he calls the pirate friend. I don't know. The pirate friend comes to his house and he's like, okay, I brought a camera. What do you want me to take pictures of? He's like, go in my room, take pictures of whatever's in the bed. And he's like, okay. He walks in there and he's like, yeah, so you want me to take a picture of the blankets and the pillows? I mean, what am I taking pictures of? And he looks and she's not there. She's gone. So he's like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening. And he's like, okay, well, we'll go meet back at your lab and we'll try to figure out what's going on with Videodrome, with this signal. So they go back to the lab. And then that's when we find out that, his pirate buddy was working with Barry Convex the whole time. So Barry Convex comes in. At this point, they realize that it was not a broadcast that he intercepted. They played a tape specifically for him. So the pirate guy never watched it. And if you go back and look at the scene, which I've done, he never actually looks at the TV. He's always doing something else and looking the other way. He never looks at the TV. The only person who ever looks at it is James Woods, is Max Wren. So that's why it affects him, but it doesn't affect the pirate guy. Now, at this point, they say, he's like, yeah. And he's like, oh, you never watched the tape. That's why it never happened to you. And he's like, exactly. So Max Wren now is at this point, he's like, okay, so what happens? And they essentially, this is where the weird stuff happens, where his chest, his stomach opens up. And he puts in a tape, like a living, breathing tape. And he says, like, okay, this is now your, this is your new program, or whatever he says. And so he goes out in the hallway and it's like he hears all these voices in his head of like telling him to do things. And he essentially, I have to digress one more time. I forgot there's another weird scene where he's sitting alone at home. And the same thing happens. His stomach opens up. And he had a gun that he had taken out for protection because weird things were happening and he was nervous. And so he ended up putting the gun inside the hole in his stomach, and his stomach resealed up and the gun was lost. And he was looking all around his house. He couldn't find the gun. And that was it. I don't remember when exactly that happened, but that happened a little early. So anyway, when he gets the tape in his belly from Barry Convex, he goes out in the hallway and he's kind of rolling around, obviously struggling with the stuff that's in his, brain, these voices. He ends up pulling the gun out again from the hole in his stomach. And then the gun merges with his hand, all these weird, metal snakes, stab through his hand and stuff and end up merging the gun into his hand. So it's permanently a part of his hand. And he gets, the controls in his brain is basically telling him to kill his partners at the TV station, so that the TV station will solely belong to Max Wren then, and then he can just give it to Barry Convex, because they're planning on broadcasting Videodrome on this channel. That's going to be the purpose of it. So they're going to expose the rest of the world to this, brain tumor causing signal. They're going to do it on his channel, and he has to go kill people. So he goes back to the office. And he does kill his two partners. He pretends like he was also shot in the attack because, they were the only three people in the room. His secretary helps him to the break room. And he escapes and he jumps out the window and gets away. And at this point in time, he's also commanded to go kill, Bianca Oblivion, because she was, she's the only one that really knows what's going on, because Brian Oblivion, was the guy who, with Barry Convex, developed this Videodrome technology. Right. And then Brian Oblivion saw what they were doing, saw that it was bad, and wanted to stop them. And since they didn't want to be stopped, obviously, they exposed Brian Oblivion to the signal so that he got the brain tumor, got the hallucinations, and ended up dying. But Barry Convex kept moving on with the work because they saw this as a great way to like mind control people. So whereas Brian Oblivion was just kind of like trying to, expand the human experience by giving them a new way to experience stuff. But again, they twisted it to the bad way. So Barry Convex won. So now he's trying to do it the bad way. So he goes to kill Bianca Oblivion because she's the only other one that knows what happened to her dad, Brian Oblivion. So he goes to kill her. And they have like a weird kind of like standoff where they're like running around the cathode ray mission. And he thinks he finds her, and he like goes into this little cubicle where he thinks she is. And there's a video that plays that essentially like deprograms him. Basically telling him the whole truth of what's going on, how they're controlling him, and why, and what they're trying to do. And it basically like brainwashes him. And again, they show it whereas like the TV comes alive and like a hand with a gun like comes out of the TV screen, which looks like a weird fleshy mound, and shoots James Wood in the chest. And then of course the TV then turns into a chest with bullet holes in it. But then, he's got these bullet holes and he's like, he goes down like he's dead. But when he gets back up, he's fine. But now he's just deprogrammed. And so now, Bianca Oblivion explains to him like, okay, you've been deprogrammed. You're not under their control anymore. So now you can, change the world the way it should be. You should, follow Brian Oblivion's original vision, right? Whether that's him being reprogrammed again her way or not isn't really fully explained, but at least it seems to be a better way from where he was.
Yeah.
It's better than being totally controlled. At least he had a part in the decision process.
Right.
So at that point, he decides that he's going to get back at him. So he goes back to weird pirate guy who's now working in the glasses place. And he goes back, and the pirate guy tries to take another tape and put it in his stomach to reprogram him to kill somebody else. And instead, his weird stomach mouth thing like clamps on his hand and takes his hand off and replaces it with a grenade. Where he got the grenade from, who knows? But then, so he goes back, and of course, he's got this bloody stump with a grenade sticking out of it, and everybody runs and screams. He goes by a door and explodes, and conveniently blows up the wall in a door shape that he can just walk right out of. And he does. Then he walks right out of, and he finds out that Barry Convex is having a trade show to show off their new spring line of glasses.
Yes.
So he goes to this trade show. He sits down. We watch like a little song and dance of people dancing around to introduce these new glasses. We see the presentation for these new glasses. And then Max Wren gets up when he's on the stage, chases him around a little bit, and then shoots him with his weird fleshy handgun. And then when it shoots him, instead of just being bullets that destroy him, it literally like they turn into like cancerous tumors that like explode out of his body, like explode out of his chest and crack his head in half and explode out of his head. It's all bad. And he runs away. I mean, completely unaccosted. Like no one even tries to stop him. They're all just watching him die from cancer explosion or whatever. So he runs to like the docks. He goes into like this old, like, beat down condemned boat. It looks like homeless people have been living in. And so he sits down, and of course a TV appears in there. And Debbie Harry is on the TV. Sorry, I have to digress a little bit. Back when Bianca Oblivion was deprogramming him, she showed him video of Nikki, Debbie Harry, being on Videodrome and being killed. Yes. So like she was already dead back when he was hallucinating her after she had left for Pittsburgh. Because
he saw her on the tape, I believe, and that's why he was having visions of her.
Right, yeah. So he was having hallucinations of her. So all those hallucinations that he had, she was already dead, and they had already killed her on Videodrome. He just didn't see that episode, and she is now showing him that episode. Yes. And that's what eventually helped to deprogram him. Sorry, going back. Okay, yeah. So now he's back in the boat, and the TV is there. Debbie Harry is there, saying like, "Okay, you did a good job. You changed the world for the better, whatever." And so now you have to take the next step, and the next step is essentially, killing himself. And she's like, "Here, watch this. This is how it happens." And it shows a video of him like kneeling down in front of a fire and then pulling the trigger and killing himself. And so then it literally goes to him, and the same scene plays out in his head, right?
Yep.
The same exact thing happens, and then he puts a gun to his head and he says the line. It's been said a couple times before now, but I wanted to save it till the end, where he says, "Death to Videodrome, long live the new flesh."
He said the line.
Yeah,
he said the line.
Yeah, that's the line. That's where my line comes from. Is this movie, and he pulls the trigger, bang, and then movie's over.
Yep. I do want to point out that he did something in the boat / shipping container that people always seem to do when you find vagrant homes is you start drinking open bottles of liquor.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean,
you always that would never cross my mind. Who knows how long it's been down there? This could be bottle used for pee.
Well, see, that would be my
open
immediate
container.
Thought. I mean, my immediate thought: any open container for me that I didn't open the container is filled with urine. That's plain and simple. I treat every open container that was not opened by me as filled with urine. I will never drink anyone else's drink unless I watch them open it and I've had my eye on it the whole time and I know there's no urine in it. Otherwise, I assume there is. I don't drink out of other people's things.
Such a common thing to show in movies and TV that what? No.
I know. Yeah. For me, it's like, no. Like, I'm not that, like, I'm not like a hypochondriac or anything, but like, drinking out of weird bottles that have been sitting in like, obviously like a derelict boat. Like, no way.
They do that in video games too, in horror video games. The post-apocalyptic. Hey, there's this open bottle of alcohol. Let me drink from it.
Right.
No.
Right. Well, I mean, there's so many games like the weird stuff that you eat. Like, you're in the middle of like in The Last of Us, right? You're in the middle of a game, and like, what do you do? Oh, look, a bag of chips. Like, okay, this bag of chips has been sitting here for like 20 years. Like, obviously, if it did somehow miraculously survive intact, it's going to be disgusting to eat.
Yes.
But it's like munch, and you get health. It's like, get out of town. There's no way a bag of chips would be like edible in 20 years.
Well, like I said, that always gets me in movies. I just had to point that out because I'm just like, that needs to stop.
Yeah. Oh, and again, I should point out there is a lot of smoking in this movie. So if you are
just
trying
chimneys, chimneys.
If you are trying to quit smoking, do not watch this movie because, like, I believe almost every scene someone is smoking. Like, it's almost the entire time.
Smoke? Are you smoking yet?
All right. So what were your first thoughts watching this movie?
My first thoughts was I was with you when I watched this because it was earlier this year and I had never watched it. And this is obviously before the podcast started. And I feel like I knew a lot about this movie, especially like the cancer gun. Like that's very talked about, I feel, in a lot of things. The whipping of the TV. And this is my first thought was like, this is kind of like Cronenberg becoming unhinged and being able to do whatever he feels like.
Well, yeah, because I mean, Scanners is the movie that put him on the map, right? That was the movie that like showed that he's good. He can handle, effects and franchise and blah, blah, blah. So this was the first movie he got to make like basically free from studio constraints.
Yeah.
And it's obviously this is like real Cronenberg. It's real Cronenberg weirdness and bizarre bladder work and all kinds of like body horror stuff. Yeah, this is I think in my opinion pinnacle Cronenberg.
Yes. And I don't disagree with that. And I think I even said that after watching, like, I don't know why I never watched this the entire way through. Like, what took so long? Like, being a horror fan, that it never escaped me growing up. Like I said, I think it's just because of the time frame when this came out versus the time frame I was renting stuff that it was just not in the rental place.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I knew a decent amount about it, but obviously not enough. But like I said, it's definitely a rewatch.
Yeah, I didn't watch it back in the day, like in the old days of like video stores at all. I didn't watch it, I believe, until it was like early high school. If you remember back in the days when IFC used to show movies uncut with no commercials. This is a while ago. I know. But yeah, they always like late at night. I would be like out with friends, like partying and stuff, and I'd come home and there would always be the weirdest movies on, like the weirdest movies. The first time I saw Naked Lunch was when I came home and I'm like, what is happening? But this was one of those movies. Like I came home and I was watching VideoDrome. I caught it, it was like halfway through and I'm like, what is going on? Because, you're like, whatever, lingering effects of being drunk or high from, being a high school kid partying, and so I'm like, I don't know what's fucking going on. I have no idea what's happening. And so like I made sure that the next time, because obviously this is before the days of on-demand television and stuff like that. So I had to like look in the TV guide, to like look for the next time that movie was going to be on. And I made sure that I watched it the next time it was coming on all the way through. And I was like, what is this movie? It's fantastic, but what is going on?
Yes.
And I've loved it since then. So yeah, it wasn't like when I was a kid. This is like, later high school age when I first started watching it. But yeah, I've seen it many times since then, and I loved it since then.
Yeah. I feel like, obviously edited, I feel like this was on like, late night with Joe Bob Briggs or one of those type things, Monster Vision. It feels like it would have been on there. Obviously, very edited.
Right. That's fair.
But no, it's definitely, first thought was like, this is Cronenberg. This is what we think of Cronenberg, and it very much so.
Right.
And it's good for it. Like I said, it's very unhinged. It's very, I wouldn't say all over the place, but his stuff tends to be kind of all over the place sometimes.
It does. I mean, it's not quite as bad as like David Lynch, but it does take weird leaps and like definitely like goes off on weird tangents sometimes that sometimes end up being red herrings that don't mean anything. They're just there because they're weird. And I think that does it on purpose, but I think he is able to contain the narrative a bit better so you can understand what the story is supposed to be. There was like sometimes with David Lynch, you're like at the end of the movie, you're like, what was the point of that? Like, what is the plot of this movie? I don't even understand what's going on. But yeah, sometimes Cronenberg is a better way of reining you in and keeping that thing. Yeah. And this movie, I really, really liked. I think it was experiencing the time period, especially that Zennial thing that we fall into, with our analog childhoods, right? Is there's always like, I'd say multiple times in a generation. I was going to say once in a generation, but it feels like it's more than that. And it's like all these old people, or whatever moral people, whatever they are, they always try to say like this new thing is going to like destroy society. Yes. Right. It's always going to be whatever the new thing is, it's going to hurt you. And it's, at first it was, all these horror and exploitation movies, they're going to desensitize people and overstimulate them. And, sex and violence are going to be mixed and it's going to be, it's going to end society. And this is basically the answer to that. This is the answer to like what would happen if people became these desensitized, monsters that people think they're going to be. And also they can be mind controlled by these things, which again, these people always say, and they always come in different forms. They get, the
boob tube turns into a zombie.
Right. We always, right. You always get like, obviously, horror movies and, and exploitation movies and porn does that. Also, you get the same thing with video games, right? Video games will rot your brain. Oh, violence. Oh, you're controlling a person that murders people. You're going to end up a murderer in real life. I mean, obviously, none of this stuff is backed up. But I mean, you get the same thing with, the internet. Everybody's got access to all these horrible videos and pornography, and it's going to destroy the world and society. Every time a new thing, every time a new kind of media, every time a new kind of something happens, everybody's always up in arms. It's going to destroy society. It's going to ruin it. I mean, will it change it? Sure. I mean, it definitely does change it. I mean, definitely does evolve it, but it's not going to destroy it like people assume.
I don't know. TikTok, Instagram, I feel destroying.
Right. That's currently what the thing is social media and those kind of things, right? They're destroying society. Obviously right now they probably are, just like when these things first came out. Yeah. There was a big jump in people caring and people, freaking out that these things are going to change stuff. In the long term, will it? Who knows? We'll have to look at it, a few years from now. But so far, none of these things have any real lasting impact. I mean, they change the way we experience media, sure, but they don't change people
Yeah.
as a whole. Like society has not changed into like crazy murder monsters because violent video games and horror movies exist. But there's always people that will. And this movie is basically like the personification of that, of like what happens if things happen the way that all these crazy moral people think that they will. And that's
Right.
That's what it is. This is what happens.
So, and there's a couple of on those notes. I like that there's an Atari 2600 on the TV with the bladder effect, which it kind of feel like is tying into the video games also raw in your mind. It's there.
Oh, yeah,
I don't know.
it's definitely there.
I feel like it's definitely there on purpose just to incorporate
It is. But I mean, again, this was very early in that debate. I mean, this is like what, 83? So I mean, video games were told about that. Oh, they're going to rot your brain, but they already had the falling out, right? This is around the time that the ET game destroyed the video game industry, and it took a while to come back. But this is right around that time period, so it wasn't as strong for video games. It would be later on, I mean, like when Lieberman came out with this whole anti-video game campaign thing. That was later on, not much later, but a little bit later on than this. But around this time period, video games weren't strong. It was there, obviously, but it wasn't as strong. But it was more on the porn, horror movies and, exploitive violent movies that were out there. Those are the things that at that time in 83 people thought was going to, destroy the world. That D&D, obviously.
Right. So here's the question for you.
Mm-hmm.
His relentless search for the next big thing of horror, does that remind you of yourself 10 years later looking for that exact thing?
No, I mean, he's looking for, I mean, he's obviously, he wants to be on that cutting edge of new things, right? So that would be like, obviously, if you're on the cutting edge of podcasts before they became a thing, if you're on the cutting edge of like, video, or YouTube stuff before it became a thing, that's what he's looking for. He's looking for the new big thing, and he wants to be the center of it. I don't want to be the center of things. I mean, I would like to find new things and experience them. Oh,
the search.
Definitely. I mean, the search of it, yes. I mean, I don't want to be the focus of it. I don't want to be the cutting edge of it. But yeah, I want to experience the cutting edge. I want to see what it is, to know what it is.
Well, it's very reminiscent of, as we discussed before, the Faces of Death.
Mm-hmm.
Us looking for the Faces of Death tape, which is essentially Videodrome.
Yeah, kind of, more or less, right.
And because the school, the talk was Faces of Death, real things, and our morbid fascination got the better of us. We have to see this, right?
Right.
And to me, that parallels what we went through 10, 15 years later of him trying to find the ultimate horror. And that's what I did. I'm trying to find the scariest, most gruesome thing I could possibly find. And it's still relevant, like I said, when we were doing video rentals, to find that. And the Faces of Death being the prime example. Faces of Death is Videodrome for us in real world ways.
Yep. No, yeah, I'll definitely get on that. I guess it's kind of strangely ironic that I didn't know Videodrome existed at that time when it was essentially, a good metaphor for what I was doing or what we were all doing at that time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So definitely on board with that.
So I think that's funny. Just it's real life of us doing the same thing essentially of that search.
Right.
So yeah, this is definitely on my rewatch list. I think I can have the wife watch. I don't think it'll be too bad.
It's not too bad. I mean, if she's okay with like the stomach mouth thing, I mean, that's really about as bad as it gets. I mean,
it's
obviously
not different than the thing.
The cancer explosion is probably the worst that it gets.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more weird than gory.
Yeah.
It's more just like weird shit. Like, you're not like weirded out by stuff like whipping a TV things. Like, I think she'll be okay.
All right. So what are your highlights? I know we discussed a lot, but if you had to pinpoint your highlight for them.
I'll limit it to two things. How about that? The highlights would be, one is just that feeling that I get, like remembering that weird time when movies were going to rot everybody's brain and it was going to be the downfall of society, and then looking back at it now and just seeing how ridiculous that is. But also some of the new wave things, like the way that Brian Oblivion was talking about things. He was basically like channeling how the internet was going to change the world. And then he was trying to put it on video at that time, but I mean, it didn't take off the way that they thought it was going to. People didn't like become TV shows like he was trying to say that they were. But, you know, later on when you get to the internet, when you can be that anonymous, you know, being that you create for yourself inside of the machine, like it really does do exactly what he said it was. And this is, you know,
20 years beforehand.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, 10 years before the internet was even really available to normal people. And 20 years before it became popularized. Definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then that, and of course, I mean, the effects are cool. Yeah. I like the weirdness of it. I love the weirdness of this movie.
I'm surprised you didn't say Debbie.
Debbie Harry is fantastic. I mean, yes. I love Debbie Harry, but yeah, I'm trying not to be vulgar and rude here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, highlights the effects. This is full blown Cronenberg of what we can do, what we can get, and really highlights, you know, like Rick and Morty and the whole Cronenberg creature effect is really, this is the start of it, hands down. The practical effects, absolutely love. And I'm not that big a fan of James Woods, and he's neurotic, to say the least, in all his stuff. But that really plays well into the movie.
Yeah, and it really, because he's playing. I mean, this works out for the character that he's playing. Is that his normal, you know, weirdness and how he approaches things works for this character. Yeah, and I agree with you. James Wood can be great, or it can be off-putting, depending on what role and movie you put him in. Because if it's a role that's made for him, it's great. I mean, he's fantastic in a lot of movies. Yep. But sometimes you put him in a movie that he doesn't necessarily fit in, and it's very off-putting. It's like, he wasn't the best choice for this, but
like this was the perfect casting.
Yes, agreed.
Hands down,
perfect.
Hands down, perfect casting. Those are my points. Low points though for you, if you have any.
Low points is how many times that weird guy says Patron. Like he says it with no accent whatsoever, right? He's like saying it like a white guy says it, but he says it a million times. It's like, dude, he's like, okay, Patron. I mean, okay, this is the pirate guy. I don't think I mentioned his name. I don't even know his name. But
a pirate
guy. That's what I called him. But yeah, he's like, he apparently is supposed to be like Latin in some way, right? Because he's like says C instead of yes, and then he says Patron when he's like referring to him. Those are the only things he ever does that would kind of refer to it. I don't understand what is up with that because like the actor isn't a Latin actor. I don't get it. I don't.
80s.
Yeah. Again, they put weird stuff like that in there. Again, it's like, it's the way that he says it. He says it like just a white dude would say it. And it's like, I don't know why they didn't just write that out. It's bizarre. But yeah, that's my low point. I don't like
that. Low points. And this isn't against, I wouldn't say this is against the movie. It's a low point for me is that I took so long to see this. And it does require rewatches. It really, really does. Like the first time, it's so bizarre that it's hard to wrap your mind around what's happening the first time.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's totally it's a built-in rewatch, which isn't a low point, but I mean, it's not. It's a mark of a good movie, but having to have to watch it more than once, which is fine.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. I don't need everything answered, but yeah, it's too bizarre to the uninitiated, I would say, that don't know Cronenberg.
Correct. Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely agree with you. Yeah, because I mean, I didn't catch probably a lot of like major plot points until I watched it more than once. Like, I mean, I guess the first couple of times I watched it, I didn't fully grasp that like Brian Oblivion and Barry Convex were business partners. Yeah. And that he was the one that sabotaged Brian Oblivion. I didn't get that at all. Like, or what was happening with the whole tape in his stomach thing. Like, you know, like, I was like, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, again, you have to watch it a couple of times before you're like, oh, okay, that's what's happening. This is a metaphor for what's going on. They're just visually showing what's happening.
Right. Like I said, and then the low point of him just drinking whatever and the bottle of when he's alcohol.
Right. Right. And yeah, I remember when I was quitting smoking, I literally tried watching this movie and I had to shut it off. I'm like, oh, I can't do it. I can't. Like, this is ridiculous. I mean, now I'm okay because I'm quit. I totally quit now. But yeah, or when I was smoking, like I would have to like, if I was able to smoke in the house, great. I was smoking like the whole time the movie was playing. But if I couldn't smoke in the house, I would have to like pause it every like 15 minutes to like go outside and smoke because they just smoke so much. Like every scene, someone is smoking.
They're chimneys.
Oh my god, movie. Just constantly.
Yeah. All right. So, is it horror?
I would say okay. This follows the same horror elements that Scanners does. Yeah. It's the whole like losing control of yourself type of thing. Mm-hmm. But I would say this one more directly confronts that because it shows you like weird body horror, like literally things taking you over, like being inserted into your body. Like that is true body horror. So the percentage goes way up in this one.
Oh yeah.
So I would say that yes, this one does constitute as horror simply because the body horror element is so strong that you can't deny it.
Right. And I agree. And where else do you have cancer guns?
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So shotgun shells out of 10 for you on this one. I imagine this is pretty high up.
Yeah. I'm gonna go really high. I'm gonna shoot for the sky. I'm gonna say 10 shotgun shells out of 10. I love this movie. It's one of my very favorites.
Wow. One of our rare 10s. We get close to 10s. We get close to 10s.
I think this might only be my second 10.
Possible. Once we get the website up and running, I'm going to go through and do that.
Right.
And track it. I'm doing 9. Mm-hmm. 9. It's just because I was so new to it. If I had more rewatches under my belt, it'd probably be a 10 for me.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, again, there's off-putting things in the movie. Again, some people are put off by how weird and confusing it is, and I can't deny any of those things. I mean, they are true. I get it. I'm not saying that hey, you're lesser for not understanding. No, it is weird, and it takes some time and, like you said, multiple watches to fully grasp and get your head around what's happening. But I think, once you do, it really hits. But it also hits in that, like I said, that nostalgic point for me, because I remember, as a kid when people were talking about video games are going to destroy society, horror movies and exploitive movies are going to destroy society. All of these things would happen all the time. And it really, I feel that when I watch this movie, I get that feeling back of like, the ridiculousness of like all these things are going to destroy society, which obviously they did.
Right. You were around more so for horror movies because that was the 80s.
Yeah.
I wasn't watching them then. I was definitely there for the 90s though for video games.
Yeah. But again, because back then, I was, I watched TV all the time. So I watched like, talk shows and all that kind of shit. And that's what they talk about. That's what talk shows do is they talk, right? But they would always talk about, the downfall of society is going to be, because of what? And it was almost always, video games and violence and porn and whatever. It was always that same stuff. And this, obviously, it's a different argument now. There's still a lot of people touting those same arguments now, but it's overall it's different now than it was.
Right. All right. So let's get into the last movie of this episode, which is The Fly. I believe that was 1986. Yep. Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis.
Now, the interesting thing is, it came out at the same time as Aliens. It was also made by the same company, and they had a special going on that if you bought tickets to one, you would get tickets to the other for free.
Oh wow!
Can you imagine how cool that would have been?
That'd been amazing.
Right, to go see Aliens and The Fly at the same time. That would have been great.
Amazing.
Obviously, I didn't do that at that time. I've seen at like newspaper ads where it says buy tickets to one, get tickets to the other, and it was The Fly and Aliens. I'm like, get out of town. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
All right. So it's all right. So it starts off at a, what do you want to call it? Science convention?
Oh yeah, it's like gala. It's like a fancy cocktail party.
A who's who of scientists, essentially. Correct. Right?
Yeah, even though we are only ever exposed to 2 people at this party, that's the vibe that we get.
Yes. And Gina Davis is a reporter, and she's trying to get scoops of the upcoming scientific events, what scientists are doing, and try to find a piece for her story, right? And she kind of runs into Jeff Goldblum, who says, I'm going to revolutionize the world. Do you want to see this thing? You're going to be missing out. I'm going to change the world. What is it? Well, I can't tell you here. There's too many people listening. I can't just give out my secret. You're going to have to come back to my lab.
Yeah, not creepy at all. Yeah, not creepy at all.
Yeah, not creepy at all. So the event is from the company that's funding his work. She's like, hey, let's go here. And they take a cab. She drives.
Yeah, she drives. And this is the first time he starts telling her that he's motion sick, and he gets motion sick in any kind of vehicle, and he hates vehicles.
Which is he got motion sickness as his tricycle.
Yeah.
And his home / laboratory is not seemingly in a good neighborhood. It's like, you live here. He's like, oh, it's much prettier on the inside, right?
And it's not.
No, it's not.
but it's funny.
Yeah. So essentially, he starts explaining what he's doing. And she kind of starts a tape recorder to get the voice so she can write it out, as journalists do. And he starts explaining what's going on. He's like, hey, there's this computer and I have these pods, I'm unable to travel. I hate traveling. So what if I could revolutionize travel as we know it? And so, we can just not have the motion sickness. This is his cure for his motion sickness, essentially.
Right.
That's his reasoning for this. So she's like, hey, do you have, a piece of jewelry? I'm purposely doing the stuttering just because it's Jeff Goldblum. Because that's his character.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, do something intimate on you that I can do that. And she's like, oh, I don't wear any jewelry. Okay, what about intimate? And she like pulls up her business skirt a little bit and takes off her stocking.
Mm-hmm.
Which you would think like the shoe would have been enough.
Yeah, I know. I thought she was going for the shoe, and I'm like, okay, that's fair enough. And I was like, oh.
And she reaches up like, oh, now it's gonna be like a garter belt.
Right.
Garter. No, and the stocking. So he puts it in there and types into his computer, and it analyzes the properties of this. And he's like, watch this, and watches it, and it disappears. And then she's like, okay, come look at this other pod. And hey, look, there's the stocking. She's like, oh, is this a hologram? I like that. Is this a hologram? It's 1986.
But that's sci-fi in 1986.
Yeah. He's like, no, it's real. And she's like, okay, cool. And she goes back to her boss at the journal, who we find out that, they used to be lovers.
Okay, well, now here's okay. I'm going to stop you for one second. And he tries talking about how, okay, the stocking gets teleported from one to the other, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Comes through exactly enough. And he's talking about how disappointing it is that he can't do it with people, with organic beings, right?
Yes.
If you took this technology with being able to teleport inanimate objects over how long of a fucking distance, you have literally changed the world.
Yes.
You have changed the world. You have literally changed the logistics system as we know it. Yeah. You would be a billionaire probably wouldn't even describe how much money you would have if you developed this technology and patented it. I mean, you would be outrageously rich. The world would be a completely different place. You'd change everything. You'd be able to get food and medicine to anyone who needs it immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, what? They're all upset, like, oh, we can't do organic things. Oh, what a failure this is. This would have revolutionized everything in the world. Yes. What are you talking about? It's a failure because you can't do people.
Not people travel. Everything else.
I'm just blown away. I'm like, what are you talking? Failure? What are you talking about? All right. Sorry. Go ahead.
It's all right. And she brings back to her journalist who's ex-lover. He's like, oh, he's a magician. That I've seen this magic act, a million times. It's con man, blah, blah, blah. Well, I understand that. She, yes, he put it in there, but whatever. And she starts to, go more. She's like, okay, so what happens if we put in living tissue? And here's the part that gets me. He gets baboons for his experiment. I've never seen anyone use baboons in scientific research. It's usually chimpanzees, and he gets baboons.
I mean, it doesn't. We could have used rats. I don't know why he's using a baboon. Why don't you use a rat?
Baboons are expensive.
I know, but like a rat or mice, it'd be way easier.
Maybe he was trying to do something as close to people as possible.
I guess.
I don't know.
But like, I mean, you still, if you're perfecting your technique, why? I mean, he goes from like, let me test a steak to let me test a monkey. Like, whoa, there's a lot of in between there, dude.
Yeah. So, he does the baboon, which seems to like him already. And teleports, and all of a sudden you see like a bloody stump hit the thing to open up, and his like skin's gone. He's like turned inside out.
Right. Yeah.
And just horrified.
Yeah, it's not good.
Right. So they start going through and trying to figure out how to make this work. And then, as she's very turned on by sexy Jeff Goldblum, and they have sex. And she starts talking about his flesh. Like she wants to kiss his flesh, that the mother smells the flesh of her newborns, and it's flesh, right?
He's crazy for flesh.
Yes. And while they're doing it, he has like this microchip that stabs him in the back, which comes into play later.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, like pretty deeply. Like that looks extremely painful.
Yeah. Right. And then he gets that aha moment that he gets in like Independence Day, right? That key word that sets every scientist off, that it happens to everyone, that eureka moment.
Right.
So he realizes that he has to compensate for flesh, and that his computer doesn't understand living tissue, because you know what? It's a computer. I get it. So he cuts a steak essentially in not even half, like a third. And
it's a very odd cut. Yes.
Yeah. So he cooks one up. That's a normal steak. And then he cooks up the transporter one that came back after he taught his computer, which he speaks to.
It was before. She tastes it and she goes, "Oh, this tastes funny." He's like, because he didn't make the changes to it yet.
Okay, yeah. Well, he programmed some flesh into it, but this is the first attempt. And then, the teleported one doesn't taste right. It's not sequencing it properly back in order, because it doesn't fully understand.
Right.
So yeah, it's essentially what the machine does. It creates a synthetic version of the flesh of the meat. So that's why it's off. And then she pushes away and starts eating, the good part. That was like a third of the steak.
Right.
Weird ass cut. Even though she said the steak wasn't good, but she's kept eating it.
She said it needs a little finesse, I think she said.
Right.
Whatever. So,
he starts working on this computer program, which says part code, part vocal commands, which is amazing for 1986 computers to be able to speak commands into it.
Yeah. Well, again, yeah. I mean, this is another instance of, I need to ask your computer a question. How do I do that? Just type in a question. Just type in the question, and the machine will just answer the question. Like, I mean, I don't understand why this whole 80s era of computers. It was like, we don't know how to have computers do things, so we're just going to type in, tap, 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 tap. Oh, how do I do this? And the computer just answers you exactly how to do it. Like, you don't understand the level of complexity and how much programming you would have to do to literally make an AI that could answer a question.
There's still punch cards in this time.
I know. I'm just saying, like, there's no way a computer would ever be. I mean, computers can't answer questions now.
Right.
Again, back then, every computer in an advanced situation, every computer could just answer a question easily.
Yep. Absolutely. So he starts to figure out that he gets, because he has baboon money, another baboon, and transports it, and successful. And the baboon, of course, gives him a big old hug, because baboons are known for being very, very friendly towards people. Oh, wait. No, they're not.
Yeah, I was saying, like, what?
Right. And she's like, this is amazing. They're going to get some blood work, and, they're going to test them out and verify that the baboon is okay. Which is fine. It's like, hey, this went through. So he goes, stocking, steak, baboon, and his next logical step is people.
Right.
One test, one successful test. That's all you need.
Right.
Because clearly time is an issue for him for some reason. I don't know.
Well, he was jealous, man. That's why he did.
Yeah. So that's what I'm getting to. So, she's getting us all the stuff at her, has a key to her house still, and Steph gets very, very jealous and worried that, oh, you love him, do you still have feelings for him, blah, 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 gets drunk. He goes, you know what? It's time. I'm doing it myself. Gets in there naked, which I don't think we ever discussed wearing clothing would look like in that.
Well, again, I mean, yeah. Why would it matter? I mean, you'd think that like
synthetic versus flesh. Yeah.
Well, no, yeah, but you'd have to like say, okay, these are individual things. Like, don't do them all together. I mean, you'd think you'd have to do that no matter what, right? But I don't think
people are going to be transporting themselves naked.
I'm just saying. Well, yeah, not at first. But I'm saying at first I understand why. I'm just saying, like, I would think that it would have to be programmed in from the very beginning, or it wouldn't work. You'd have to like separate things because like different things are made from different materials and shit. And like, if they say, like talking about like, oh, if I teleport something, it just merges it all together. Like, okay, if you have, I don't know, like a knife, right? It's wood and metal. Like if you teleport it, is it going to become wood and metal, like one being together?
Yeah.
No, it can read the different parts and put them together in the right order. I don't understand why it wouldn't do the same. Whatever.
Right.
I'm getting beyond.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So he does it, and he isn't aware, but a fly goes in the pod with him, and he seems to come out pretty normal. She comes back, and he's like exhilarated, like he's able to be a world-class gymnast from the teleportation.
Right.
Look what I can do.
Well, I mean, having the strength to do that is one thing, but I mean, the amount of training and skill it takes to be able to do that stuff, he would not have that muscle memory. I'm sorry. I get. They're just trying to demonstrate how he has changed. I get that. I'm not trying to downplay that. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So, they go out, and he's like, "Yo, this is great." They go to talk it over coffee, all the secret stuff in a big public small space. And we start seeing that he has a craving for sugar. He's like, are you going to take some coffee with your sugar? Right.
Yeah. Cause it was like an espresso, and it was like literally like as much sugar as there was espresso in there.
Yes. So, he starts demanding, and then we get our first Jeff Goldblum moment in this cafe. He starts ranting as he does, and we get peak Jeff Goldblum in this. And I love it. And he can go for hours having sex now too, like to the point where she is exhausted. He wants to keep going. He goes, well, it's because you're not purified. I believe me going through here the resequencing has purified me, put me back in the best order I could possibly be in. So you need to do this. Come do this. She goes, no. She realizes from that stab of the microchip in his back that hairs are growing out. She kind of clips him, and he starts having some wounds on his face. She's like, you can't do this anymore. You can't do this. And he's like, no, you have to do this. You have to do this. And she leaves. He just doesn't understand. So he goes through it again, become more purified again to get that purification process. So he gets mad. He goes, it's like, oh, we're broken up, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to go find someone that will do this. So he walks seemingly a long way to a bar. He sees two guys arm wrestling, and is like, $100 says I can beat you. Yeah, right. It's like $100 and I get the girl.
Right. Yeah, and she makes a comment like, I'm not a prostitute, but then proceeds to act like a prostitute. So
correct. And she doesn't get the $100.
No.
So
exactly.
So he starts arm wrestling, and he starts oozing like the strong grip, and he breaks the guy's wrist, like snaps it.
Yeah. Yeah, like bone sticking out of flesh, snapped it.
And she is so impressed with his anger and strength that she goes back with him to have sex.
Of course.
Because right, you just broke my boyfriend's hand. You're hot.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
that's what you do. You go to a bar, you break somebody's hand. They're all, women are like, "Ooh, that's awesome. Let's go back to our place."
Right. They do it, and he's trying to convince her to go in there, and she's like, "No, I don't want to do it. You have to." She's like almost ready to throw her in there, and then Ronnie comes back and says, "Leave. This is you have to stop."
And her name was Tawny.
Tawny. Yes.
That's
Tawny.
That's the name of a girl you'd pick up in a bar.
Well, yeah, that's fair. So she's like, "I'm leaving, blah, blah, blah." I believe this is the time that she finds out. No, this isn't it. And he's like, "You're changing. You don't see what you look like." And he goes in the bathroom and just realizes that he sees pustules kind of on his face. And he starts to bite his nail, and he bites his nail and just rips off.
Right.
He goes, "Oh, let me squeeze my finger and pus will just explode out of it."
Yeah. But yeah, she also said she got the hairs analyzed and they were not human.
Not human. Most likely insect.
Yeah.
He, after pulling off his nails and exploding his fingers, he goes, "You know what? Something might be wrong with me." So he goes through his records and is just kind of like, analyzing, oh, there's a second occupant or whatever it was in the pod with him, and analyzing it, and it's enough to draw out a perfect 3-dimensional thing of a fly.
Of course.
And he goes, "Okay, what happened to the fly? Did I absorb it?" He goes, "No, it's been fused." He goes, "Oh, all right." And then he starts to deteriorate more, and his teeth start to fall out, and he just kind of disappears and doesn't say anything for a couple of weeks. He finds out what's going on. He calls Ronnie. She goes, "I need to see you. I need to show you. We need to record this for posterity. This is a big thing. I instead of being transporters, I became able to fuse on the molecular level. It's genetics. We can do a lot more with this." We see him. He's, doesn't have any clothes. His skin is kind of ragged, if you will. He's able to climb up the walls pretty well, like a fly would. He starts calling himself Brundlefly because he's no longer Seth Brundle. He's no longer a fly. He's sure like, "Hey, look how I eat," and just pukes up onto a donut.
Oh, right.
And he seems surprised how disgusted she is with it. I'm disgusted by this.
Yeah, okay. There's this scene, slightly later on where she shows the video to her, ex-boyfriend editor guy, and just the sound, they don't show the video. Just the sound of it was grossing me out.
And then the slurping afterwards.
Yeah, I was like, oh, God. I mean, I can't even see it. That sound was enough to I was unsettled.
Yeah. Right. And he's talking about he wants to become the first, what are the politics of insects? They don't have any. I want to be the first human, insect politician. And, he's losing his mind.
Right.
Literally.
Yeah.
He's doing a fusion program. He wants to dilute it, and he realizes that he needs another person. That another person would help dilute the fly DNA that's now part of his, molecular makeup. Ronnie finds out that she's pregnant, and she has a nightmare where she gives birth essentially to a giant larva or maggot.
Who's the gynecologist in the dream?
Cronenberg.
Yep.
Which Cronenberg was the guy with the video headset in VideoDrome.
Well, yeah, you don't get to see him. Yeah.
Yeah. So she goes I need to have an abortion. And she goes back to her ex-lover / editor in charge, to go see the doctor. We have to have this now. And while she's prepping for the abortion, Brundlefly realizes what's going on and tracks her down, crashes through there, and essentially steals her, kidnaps her.
Yep.
He says, carry the child because this is the last part of me that's going to be left alive. Give birth to this child. So her editor tracks him down with a shotgun.
Yep.
Goes there, and he's ready to confront Run the Fly, and he vomits on his hand and disintegrates it.
Yep.
And then he's on the ground screaming in pain. He's reaching with his foot to the shotgun, and he's, vomits on his ankle and rips his foot off. And he's just about to do it on his face, telling him to stop. So then he goes, hey, you're going to go in this pod. I'm going to go in this pod, and we'll all combine with baby, you and me. We'll be the ultimate family. And we'll become there, and I can become human again, essentially killing her and the unborn child. Here's what I don't get is why did he just use the editor in charge? That should have been his goal all along, is use him, who we always viewed as competition.
Yeah, but I mean, at this point, he's beyond normal thought.
Right.
I think at this point, he more wanted to bond with someone that he liked.
Love.
I think he didn't want to bond with the guy because he didn't like him.
Right, and also the unborn baby because that's part of him. So that might be more of him in there, more of his DNA. So, okay, I can see that. And the guy gets up, shoots Ronnie gets thrown into it. She's fighting him off, rips his jaw off.
Yep.
And then probably the best scene for you is he becomes more Fly as he emerges from the flesh, throws her in there. He goes into the other pod. The editor shoots one of the cables and is able to free her. And Brundle Fry breaks out as the sequence is going, and it's partly out and gets transported. And then fuses him with the pod, pieces that were broken. And he comes out limp, just dragging himself along, with machinery sticking out of him. And, she goes over there with the shotgun and he puts it to his own head. He realizes he's dead. Nothing's going to stop it now. And she doesn't want to, so she backs up and I can't do it, and then shoots him in the head.
Yeah. Just kidding.
Yep. I couldn't do it point blank. But a foot away, 2 feet away, then I could do it.
Right.
End of movie. So...
And as we know, because of the excellent sequel that followed this, she does actually have the baby.
Right. And kill off Gina Davis in the process.
Right.
So my first thoughts is this was probably the first Cronenberg movie I ever saw. At the time, I didn't realize it was Cronenberg. I watched it because it was a sequel to Vincent Price's The Fly, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And the first thought, I'm like, this is an amazing movie. It is a science experiment gone wrong, almost in the vein of Jurassic Park, in the vein of Frankenstein and stuff like that. And I love the practical effects. I love the body horror. I think it was done really, really well. Now, I didn't know who Gina Davis or Jeff Goldblum were really at this time when I saw it. I watched it pretty young. So this is probably before I saw Jurassic Park. And probably before I saw Earth Girls Are Easy. Maybe not Beetlejuice, though. No, first thoughts, I thought this was a fantastic sci-fi horror. It hit every point I'd want in a sci-fi horror. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I watched this movie when I was young. And the funny thing is, I mean, I haven't watched it in, at least 20 years. It's been a long time. I've seen it multiple times, but it was always when I was younger. And when I was watching it, obviously, like the Fly and the guy, slowly transforming into the Fly, was like, scary, or, interesting to watch, right? It was fun sci-fi and stuff. But like watching it now, older, I mean, I did not realize how dark it was.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some very, very dark stuff in there. I mean, like her very real struggle of like, I'm pregnant with a baby from this guy that's like half mutant, right? I mean, like again, she's like very real fear of like, I need to get this thing out of me. I don't know
My
what's
baby's
happen.
deformed. It's
right.
gonna be deformed. The father's deformed.
Right. I mean, like that's terrible. I mean, that's like very, very dark, like very deep, stuff there. Like, and then at the very end, like him like trying to get her to kill him. I mean, that's pretty dark. I mean, and again, I didn't get that when I was a kid. I was just, I didn't fully grasp that concept. But watching it now, as a jaded adult, it's like, wow, this is dark.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I guess that was my reaction from watching it this time. I was like, when I was younger, I honestly don't remember like what I first thought of it. I know that I watched it all the way through back then, but I don't remember much about it.
Right.
I mean, I remember the transformation sequences. I remember him like throwing up on the donuts because these are things that burn into your brain, like how messed up they are.
Him pulling off his fingernails, popping his fingers.
Right. Yeah. Like I remember all that stuff because it was terrifying, at that time. That's like, again, the definition of body horror is like your body is working against you. Right.
Yep.
And that's, and that stuff, was scary. And those are the things that I remember, but I don't remember the darkness of it.
Yeah.
I rewatch
this probably 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
It's something I should watch more. Like especially with the podcast on the like remakes versus new ones, which we're going to get to obviously at some point. This is on there too. We have 2 flies and we have 2 flies. So, I mean, a comparison's there that we could do.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a quick recap of the movie, not this detail as we did in this, but when we go to the originals versus the remakes, we can revisit this. Rewatch though, it's dark. I didn't like the subplot of the editor being an ex-boyfriend. I don't think I recalled, but everything else I did.
Now, an interesting thing I want to bring up in this is the ex-boyfriend, right?
Yeah.
They really started going down that path of him being like the obsessive, vindictive, like, ex-boyfriend that was going to do everything to ruin their relationship. And to be fair, he did do that in the beginning until she went to him and, said, okay, this needs to stop. You need to leave this alone. We're not getting back together. You doing this stuff is not going to change anything. It's not going to work. And he listened.
Yep. He
actually went like, okay, well, how about a little sex then? And she's like, you're gross. And she left. But then after that, like he left him alone. I mean, he just, again, it's a very odd for that to happen to like the creepy, weird boyfriend guy because it always ends up in a bad place, right? It always ends up going into a dark place. And this is like one of the very few ones where the guy like actually comes to his senses and goes, yeah, I really should not have been doing that stuff. I'll let you live your life. I'll leave you alone. And then like when she comes to him later on, like, obviously like I need to have an abortion. He just like drops everything and goes, okay, I will help you. He's not trying to be creepy. He's not trying to, get anything out of it. He just realizes, he still cares for her on some level, realizes how bad of a time she's having and just drops everything to help her. Like literally calling up a guy, a gynecologist to do an abortion like in the middle of the night because she needs to have it out of her right now. And he like literally just does it. He's not trying to get anything out of it. He's just doing it because he once cared for her. Right.
Yeah.
And like even going at the end when he goes to, with the shotgun to save her, I don't know why he wouldn't have called the police. Right.
That's fair.
Like, why would you have? But again, but he went there to go help her. Again, at the end of the movie, it's not like, oh, they're going to get together. Like he got the girl somehow. Not at all. It's like, that's not even a factor anymore. He just went there to help her. Essentially. And he got literally burned for doing so. But again, it was just an interesting, I thought, a side plot of like, it was going down that dark path of the evil boyfriend, the evil ex-boyfriend that can't let her be happy. And it just stopped. It stopped at that point and it let her be happy. And even when she was suffering and it wasn't working out, he didn't rub it in her face or anything. He was just there for her. And it was just interesting. It's an interesting plot that you don't normally
be a trend,
see. Right?
in Cronenberg stuff,
right?
The person we thought was going to be a bad guy isn't
right.
Has a human spot in them, and still,
I like Cronenberg movies for these reasons. But yeah, sorry, continue.
Yeah, highlights for me definitely Jeff Goldblum being Jeff Goldblum. This is the first Jeff Goldblum we can get the Jeff Goldblum that we all deserve and love.
Yeah, this is the first one they were like, just go be as wacky as you want to be, and this is what we
right. Yeah. And the body horror, like the transformations were phenomenal. That it's stuck with us. I'm going to say 30 plus years that we remember all that stuff.
Oh yeah,
like we remember the body horror.
Yeah,
and that is the mark of a good body horror, is that you remember that.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, that'll be my highlight too. Is that, I mean, the practical effects and the body horror aspect of it is amazing. I mean, is great. That, like, I mean, even after not seeing the movie for 20 years, I still knew exactly what those scenes looked like. Like, you know, again, like I watched them again, I'm like, yep, I remember it exactly. Like, I know exactly what's going to happen next. I can, you know, I know exactly how it's going to explode or squirt or whatever. Like, I know exactly how those things are going to work because I remember those scenes. Now, there's a lot of stuff I don't remember. I mean, you know, like everything outside of that, of course, the actual like story element beyond him just being a fly, I don't remember at all. But so like, it's interesting rewatching that stuff again. You know, realizing how dark it was, but yeah, like, I mean, those effects, yeah, like you said, do last. They burn into your mind, and that means
absolutely,
they're fantastically done. So yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
All right, low points for me. I don't know. I'll go with the beta camcorder. And once again, that technology, like, obviously we have to have some suspension of disbelief with the idea of the transportation being there, but it's our low point for us, and all this is the computer and what the computer can do for that time frame. Like, it's not possible.
Yeah. Well, and again, yeah, that's like, it's every computer in this era. I mean, like, literally, there's at least 2 computers in just this list of 4 that you like type in tap 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 tap, like, how do I do the thing, and it goes, here's how you do the thing. You know, I mean, again, that level of programming. I understand that you have okay, like, this information would come from a computer. How do I convey that to an audience? I understand that struggle because that's I mean, hard to do, especially in the 80s, because people don't know how computers work. So I get that. That's an easy way for you to explain it. But looking back on it from today, it's like, yeah, that's impossible. There's no way that would have happened at that time period.
Now, I have a feeling I know what your other low point is.
Yeah, go ahead and guess.
I'm going to go with the transformation into the fly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the bug stuff, in general. I mean, this to me would be beyond the ultimate body horror. If I was changing into a bug with bug, like, oh my god, dude, I would have shot myself long before any of that stuff happened. I mean, there's no way I could. I can't. I hate bugs so much. I can't imagine myself being a part of a bug.
So was the transformation worse for you than the Nightmare on Elm Street one where she turned into the cockroach?
Oh, God, I don't know. Wow. I mean, this one is longer and drawn out and better done. So, yes, I would say this one's probably worse. But, I mean, they're both horrifying. Oh, God, I hate that. I mean, just anytime there's, like, bugs and stuff, freaks me out. But, yeah, no, I mean, yeah, the whole bug aspect of it just makes my skin crawl, man.
Well, in your case, it didn't fall off. So you didn't have
yeah. That's interesting. You'd think if it was evolving, like chunks of flesh would just fall off. Like, you would, like, use that for, like, you know, at least consume it or something.
Right.
But yeah, it was like essentially used his own body as a cocoon, I guess. So,
Yep. Yep. All right. Is it horror?
Yeah. I mean, this is the definition of body horror. I mean, it really, really is. So if body horror is a horror genre, this is like number 1 on the list of body horror.
Oh, yeah. Hands down.
Yeah.
Hands down horror. sci-fi is a background aspect of it.
Right. I mean, yeah, there's sci-fi elements of it, but horror is definitely the number one on the list of things involved in this movie. Genres involved in this movie, horror is number one. Specifically,
It's a science experiment gone horribly wrong.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, science fiction because there's sciencey things involved, right? That don't technically exist. So yes, science fiction would be there. I mean, a little touch of drama with the whole, pregnancy and the
that's horror too, though. You'd argue.
Well, I would, yes, but most people would.
I would too. I would. Well, no, the idea of it that the horror of that decision, as we discussed, in the darkness of it, is something that's there that people do have to decide on.
Yeah.
So that was a huge part for the darkness of it and horror.
Right.
So, all right. Number of shotgun shells. I'm going to go to 9.5. It is, I don't think it's necessarily a perfect 10, but so close. So close for me.
Yeah. No, I mean, very, very close. I will give it a 9. A 9 shotgun shells out of 10. Just because, this is like, again, a perfectly made body horror movie. I mean, this is like the quintessential body horror movie. I mean, again, you make a list of body horror movies, this is almost always going to be in at least the top 10 or top
absolutely.
5, probably, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, this is the pinnacle of body horror, and of course, you get Jeff Goldblum at his finest. At his youngest, at his most crazy and energetic. I mean, this is. So if you are a Jeff Goldblum fan at all, you will like at least the first half of this movie.
Oh, yeah. He seemed like such a baby, but like I said, 8 years before this was Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Right.
And he was a baby there.
Yep. Well,
he didn't realize how old he was.
Well, he's like a vampire. He's like one of those people that don't age. I mean, obviously now he has gray hair, but he still looks the same.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So he's aging very slowly. He's got like whatever drug Paul Rudd takes. He's got the same thing.
Yeah. And Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, them too.
All right. Anything else to add to this Cronenberg conversation?
I don't think so. I mean, other than we're probably going to have another episode at some point in time with more of them. These are just probably his most famous movies. And obviously, I stuck the Videodrome in there because it's like one of my favorite movies. Right. But yeah, I mean, like The Fly and Scanners are probably his most well-known movies. I would argue.
Yeah, like I said, this is the more horror side of David Cronenberg. We are going to be discussing. He does psychological thrillers, which are a subgenre of horror, and he does have body horror in those. So that's definitely going to be a visit in the near future for his other works.
Well, yeah, we'll get there. We're not done with David Cronenberg yet.
No. Stay tuned for more of that, obviously.
All right.
So let's go ahead and close this off. So stay tuned for next week's podcast. We'll be discussing arguably the best sci-fi horror franchise that exists, Alien.
Argument's over. It's done. It is it's number one.
I know this is your franchise. We're getting to another one of your franchises.
My franchise.
It is your franchise. Yes, I enjoy them too. You know that.
Yeah.
But these are your childhood memory franchises.
Yes.
So, on that note, this is Graveyard saying, "Have you checked on the children?"
This is Salem saying, "Long live the new flesh."
Good night.
Bye.